Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon that's happening at 1 degree Capricorn on June 21st, 2024. Now what's interesting about this full moon is we actually have another full moon in Capricorn that's happening exactly a month later on July 21st, 2024. So we're going to talk about what that means and what I feel like we can best use this full moon for. We're also going to touch upon Neptune squaring the Gemini planets Mercury, Sun, and Venus in Gemini. I briefly talked about Saturn squaring these planets during the new moon in Gemini, and I think it's very interesting that around the full moon now we have Neptune coming in and squaring these planets. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I feel like that means. Now let's first get started with this full moon in Capricorn. So I think this full moon in Capricorn and the next one are actually really important because they are, and I think it's telling that we have these two full moons in Capricorn out of all the other signs that they could possibly be in, because we have Pluto re-entering Capricorn for the last and final time in our lifetime in September of this year for 2 months. And what's interesting, even more interesting, I feel like everything's interesting to me, but that's just how the life of a Gemini, you know, like everything's intriguing and interesting. What's interesting to me is that Pluto will be going back into 29 degrees Capricorn, and the next full moon in Capricorn is at 29 degrees. So as you know, Pluto has been traversing Capricorn since 2009. 2008, it retrograded back because it, you know, does its thing, but really since 2009. And so there's been a story that's been unfolding and transforming in our whole sign Capricorn house of our chart. Pluto moved into Aquarius in March of 2023. And it's gone back over the 29th degree, I believe 3 times already. I made a video about Pluto and Capricorn. I'll link that down below so you can check that out. It's kind of a shorter one. And I'm gonna make another one once it gets closer to actually moving back into Capricorn. But in that video, I talked about how I feel like there is something left that we know is left in this part of our chart that we know we need to let go of. And it's not a relationship, it's not a job, it's not, because Pluto works on a very deep psyche level. So, you know, throwing away a job and then entering a new job with the same exact mind frame, psychology, is not the level in which Pluto works. There is something left that we know we need to let go of. And so having 2 full moons in that same sign, one of them at the same degree, is allowing us this opportunity to have a sort of revelation, culmination, a new understanding, a new illumination on that facet, on what that last thing is that we know we need to let go of before Pluto moves into Aquarius for good until 2044. And so that's why I think it's cool that we have 2 full moons in Capricorn rather than 2 full moons in, you know, Aquarius or anything else, because of Pluto going back into Capricorn. Let's talk about this full moon. I'm gonna touch on kind of the differences where I feel like this full moon is different than the next full moon. Obviously, I'll make a video about that full moon when it comes about. But I want to just kind of talk about this. So also, for this full moon that's happening on June 21st, if you have any planets around 0 to 3 degrees of Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, or Aries, you're going to feel these things the most, right? But everyone has a Capricorn sign or house in their chart, so everyone's going to feel it to varying degrees. Yeah, so let's talk about this full moon in Capricorn. So it is connected to Pluto and Capricorn for sure. Now, if we look at the lunation cycle though, we had a new moon on January 11th of this year. And I can sense it for myself. And when I do the all signs, you know, if you're like, I have no idea, you know, what this lunation cycle has been about, when I do the all signs, that might give you kind of an idea of what I could be talking about. But for me, it makes like, I'm like, yeah, of course I know exactly. So some story, some intention, or some process has been started since January 11th, 2024 that is now coming to some sort of peak or culmination. And something is being illuminated about this. And it's going to happen again in a month, but so we can start finishing up that storyline, right? That's how the lunation cycles work with the new moon and full moons. Now, this full moon in general, though, compared to the next one, has some different qualities. So the first thing I do when I look at a full moon is I look at the ruler of the full moon. So that's Saturn. So Saturn is in Pisces right now, and it is slowing down to turn to go retrograde on June 29th, 2024. So that's what's happening with Saturn. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to say. I don't know. Okay, well, I guess that's it. Okay. So the next one that's happening in July is actually going to be when Saturn is retrograde. And so, oh yes, I remember now. So that is obviously going to feel different, right? Because when a planet is retrograde, there is definitely more of a reflective and internal feel, because even though the planet is not actually moving in a different direction, that's the way it seems to us from Earth. And so what happens is the energy of that planet, whichever is retrograde, is actually moving inwardly. And so there is a time of reflection, review, which really aligns with the full moon energy, right? We don't generally think of a full moon as a time when we would be starting something new, right? It's the peak of a storyline, and then it starts winding down, and we can let go of the things that we recognize through this journey are no longer serving us, and we're starting to wind it down. And that's generally how it goes. However, because we have two full moons within a month of each other, this full moon feels a little bit different, this one in June, because it is while Saturn, the ruler, is going direct still, and also it's happening at 1 degree Capricorn, whereas the next one is happening at 29 degrees Capricorn, which is the anaretic, fated, karmic degree. So the energy is definitely more about culmination and reflection rather than taking action for the next one, for sure. Now, this one that's happening on June 21st, it is still a full moon. So all the things I said about full moons apply. And because we're getting a second chance really next month, this full moon is great for reorganization, readjustments, anything that we need to make. So something comes up, something is illuminated to us during this full moon about this journey that we've been on. And in that process, we can understand that, oh, maybe I need to shift something, right? So this isn't about starting something new. It's about reorganizing or redoing something in regards to that story. And then when it comes up again next month, or we have a new illumination, a new revelation, a new peak of the story that's happened since then, we can really allow ourselves to do all the full moon things. So during this full moon, I think whatever ritual you normally have for a full moon, I obviously would say continue doing it. It is still a full moon, but I think we have an added advantage here in which we can really have an opportunity to readjust anything that needs readjusting. And actually, what I just heard right now, I had this thought that because it's in Capricorn, it's almost like we have a responsibility to readjust and reorganize anything that is not working. And I feel like we're going to be feeling that responsibility hard because, like I said, full moon in Capricorn again, and then Pluto going back into Capricorn at the fated degree of 29 degrees for the last and final time of our lives. Yeah, so the full moon is always in opposition, right? So we've got the sun in Cancer at 1 degree, the moon in Capricorn at 1 degree. And so that's why it's generally a great time for reflection and how things have advanced from that storyline that I talked about from earlier this year. because oppositions generally are, number one, relational in aspect. So generally that's why like during full moons, we view other people as being like crazy or whatever, because the energy is very much like between the self and relating to the other. And we can attract a lot of situations or emotions that we ourselves have not dealt with around full moons. And so everyone else is also feeling that way. That's why it can seem a bit chaotic during that time. And also, there's other aspects of it. But if we're looking at just the fact that it's an opposition and that's how it works. So when we're looking at the opposition, we're trying to strike some sort of a balance, right? So that we're not attracting the polar opposite because we're not embodying enough of that polar opposite. So we're trying to always find this middle ground. And so if you are somebody who has a lot of oppositions in their chart, it forces a sort of reflection into those people's lives from a very young age. Because they can feel this tension of these opposites between their sun and their moon, and obviously other planets too. But I always see the sun and the moon, and I'm always like, everyone I like, or not everyone I like, but everyone I feel really connected to. It's so crazy. So the moon is in detriment in Capricorn, right? And I don't I don't harp on those words like, oh, it's in detriment, it sucks. But it's interesting to think about, like, why is the moon in detriment? And if we think of it logistically, yes, it's because Capricorn is the opposite sign of the sign that the moon generally rules, which is Cancer, okay, logistically. But what's interesting about Capricorn is when I think about Capricorn, my partner is a sun, moon, Jupiter, Neptune, and Capricorn. And I have outer planets in Capricorn, but I have no personal planets, and I have like Venus, South Node, and Chiron in Cancer. And I think it's interesting when I see these differences in us. And one of the things I always think about with Capricorn is that like Capricorn energy understands the necessity of adversity and can do much easier with energies that are much colder and harsher, especially when the moon is there. The moon doesn't understand the necessity in its purity. It doesn't understand the necessity for adversity and harshness. It wants to be comfortable. It wants to feel nurtured on the inside and then the outside. So it wants to feel safe. And so when the moon goes into Capricorn, there is this sort of mismatch, right? Because it's like you're putting this like, this planet that just wants to feel safe and warm and cozy and comfortable into this sign that's like, well, sometimes you don't have that and you still need to sleep, so just freaking go to bed. So when the moon is in Capricorn, we can be wise about emotional responsibility, but unless it's worked through, they can have a great difficulty with actually feeling the emotions. So that can be happening for all of us when the full moon is in Capricorn. There is a great deal of like compartmentalization that happens here, and so this can be a really great moon for like high achievement, but the moon doesn't care about achievement and responsibility. So it's about emotional fulfillment, and nurturing ourselves. So what this full moon I think is going to be asking us is how can we balance these two things out? Not to be too focused outwardly on achievements and goals, and not to be too focused inwardly on emotions and feeling comfortable. So some of the questions you can ask yourself during this full moon or in preparation for this full moon is, how have I sacrificed emotional nurturing and comfortability for outer achievement and goals? Or vice versa, you might be on the opposite end of the scale. How have I sacrificed goals and achievements in order to stay feeling safe and comfortable? And like I said, this is a great time to take stock of your goals and achievements and reevaluate if necessary based on those questions that I just asked. You could decide to take a detour from your original intentions or situations that happened around the new moon in Capricorn. Okay, so I do want to read the Sabian symbol for 2 degrees in Capricorn. And so let's see here. So the Sabian symbol is 3 stained glass windows, 1 damaged by bombardment. The key word is commemoration. The theme is reverence. Now I'm not going to read this all, but this symbol speaks to those objects and structures that commemorate the most meaningful experiences of our lives, and the need to safeguard and protect these monuments from careless or superficial destructions by those who have no appreciation or understanding of higher values. Okay, so this alludes to strength and durability or survival. Windows symbolize vision. And here, a beautiful vision has withstood an attack that damaged but didn't completely destroy it. At its highest, this symbol represents integrity and inner strength, or an ability to withstand criticism and personal assault. The accent is on stark reminders of painful periods of life that you have survived. Your greatest advantage here lies in protecting what you value from attack or loss. So that's from one source. Now, I want to read from Dane Rudyard as well, because I always look at different interpretations before seeing how I would interpret it. Sometimes it's very clear to me, and other times I feel like somebody gets an aspect of it, but there's something else. And so this one I felt this way. So according to Dane, the keynote for this is the necessary realization by any individual making a violent use of collective power that it will lead to the inevitable destruction of some of the values ensuring group integration. It seems obvious that the interpretation of the symbol should refer to the disruptive consequences of war, right? If you don't remember, the actual symbol is 3 rose windows in a Gothic church, 1 damaged by, this one says war, this one says bombardment. So, the chief who claimed power from his tribe in order to lead or save it must reckon with the consequences of a too impulsive use of this power in terms of violence. The integration he seeks to maintain or enhance may be partially destroyed if in his ambition he yearns to be the victorious war leader glorified by his people. A rose window, similar to what we read in the book, is not absolutely essential to a cathedral, yet it symbolizes that which through the light of spirit enters the edifice. Man's soul is said to be threefold. Which part of man's inner trinity of principles tends to be destroyed by the use of violence? Evidently, the principle of love and compassion. You know, this adds, in my opinion, a whole nother layer to this full moon and Pluto and Capricorn. Now, if you don't know, Pluto is in Capricorn in the birth chart of America. And so we have experienced our Pluto return. And while we are not in our own personal war, which we've talked about here, I just think this is very telling that it's coming up during multiple wars that we are helping with. And I've been noticing that there are people in politics and media who are getting fired for their stances on certain wars. And this is not just for one party versus the other, it's all across the board, which also reminds me that we are ran by one party, in my opinion, in the US, and it just looks like they're on opposing sides, but it's really just us versus the elite, or the government, in my opinion. I think that they have certainly things that they do differently, but they very much are on the same side in a lot of ways that I think many of us don't even understand. And that's not to say every single person in our government's like that, but I would say definitely the most of them. And so when I see people who are getting fired from their jobs because they're having very, very valid and very nuanced criticisms of wars, it makes me feel like this is definitely speaking to, like, you know, the window being that which the light of the spirit enters the edifice. And how even in the book we talked about windows symbolizing vision, and here's a beautiful vision that has withstood an attack that damaged but didn't completely destroy it. So on a mundane vision, or in our lives, we may see that there is a principle of integrity that we are being asked to uphold, even if it is not a part of the group integration, or may put us outside of that. And I think Capricorn in general talks about responsibility, right? And so that's why this full moon to me feels like the responsibility to integrity. Now, you know, what I would ask when I read this is, what do you value? Even if it isn't popular, do you have something that you're willing to fight for against criticism in your life? Because I think that oftentimes we forget how spiritual Saturn can be, how connected he is to our soul and our purpose in this world. And so when we have something that we're willing to fight for, that gives our soul a sense of purpose that is otherwise difficult to come by, right? Like, we can have all these outer achievements that we want to have, you know, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve this, but if there's no purpose behind it, then you're going to find yourself back in a situation where you're seeking purpose in your life. And I kind of talked about this. Actually, yeah, I did talk about this in my new moon in Gemini video when I did a little extended talk about Saturn, and I could do a million extended talks about Saturn and really every planet, how there's a misunderstanding sometimes, or we you know, there's a gross reduction of these planets, because when we're talking about them like you and I are, it's difficult to every single time talk in depth about all of the things and how they're symbolized within a planet's symbol. So this to me adds a different layer, is like, you know, and it doesn't have to be something like, I just thought it was interesting that I brought up the war, and where, you know, the USA is involved with all these things, and Pluto being, you know, in Capricorn, being a Pluto return for the US, and Pluto going back into Capricorn for this election later this year, this presidential election. I just thought that was so interesting. Like, as soon as I read that, I was like, whoa, that's very fitting for our times. So, you know, it doesn't, what you value and the experiences and the principles that you choose to hold in integrity against opposition don't have to be about those things at all, right? Like, but it's just pointing to how can we hold ourselves to a standard of spirit rather than just man, right? How others think of you versus how you feel internally is in alignment with whatever spirit, in how, you know, if you want Jesus Christ, if you want God, the universe, whatever that feels like inside of you, can that be the barometer rather than what the group thinks, you know? So that just adds a different level of responsibility there when it's at 2 degrees. Well, the full moon's at 1 degree Capricorn, but we round up. Okay, so that's that. Now I want to briefly talk about the squares from Neptune at 29 degrees to the Gemini planets. Because, you know, we had the planets in Gemini, Sun, Venus, Mercury, squaring the builder archetype, Saturn. And that was from June 8th to 12th. And then now we have the great dissolver archetype, Neptune, coming and dissolving everything that Saturn touched previously. So it's almost like dissolving any decisions that were made, or the feelings of responsibility towards decision that you were having while Saturn was hitting those things. I think it's beautiful that it happened this way where we have the Saturn squares first and then Neptune squares, because it's almost like any decisions that were made or any thoughts that you had about decisions making and the choices that you have to make, because Gemini rules choices, are going to be tested by the faith that you have in yourself or a higher power, that even if you aren't completely clear about the decisions that are being made, you know that things will turn out okay, because you either trust this higher power or you trust yourself, or both. And because Neptune is squaring these at the 29th degree, there is also a highly karmic and spiritual essence about these squares, on top of the fact that Neptune is also a very spiritual planet. So this is much more about trusting the universe and yourself than it is about knowing which decisions are right or wrong. So on the 16th, Venus is squaring Neptune, and Mercury will square Neptune on the 17th, and then the Sun will square Neptune on the 20th, right before the full moon. Whatever Neptune touches, especially in hard aspects, so conjunction, opposition, square, maybe even an inconjunct, but really those first three, it adds an element of dissolution. It adds an element of sacrifice, spirituality, creativity, escapism, possibly. It can create like fogginess, maybe where there was structure before, which can be good or bad depending on how you want to see it. Because like I said, you know, it can be a test of faith, and it can also make us see those decisions or choices that we have to make in a different way that encompasses something greater than just the responsibility of Saturn, but brings in the spiritual aspect and the aspect of the collective consciousness, you know, that because Neptune rules the 12th house, and the 12th house is the collective unconscious and the collective conscious. So it's about humanity as a whole, rather than looking at it from like your purpose in life, which Saturn can, you know, really harp on sometimes. You know, Saturn's about responsibility. Neptune is about like, it can show us where we lack responsibility almost. And it can stimulate the sense of creativity when it's well integrated. It can show up as a spiritual vision or, you know, intuition, a compassionate nature for sure. But with the harder aspects, generally, this can lead to more of the negative things that we've talked about, including like some delusions on some end. So just being aware of that. These are all things to be looked out for, and obviously depending on which planet's hitting, it's going to be a little bit different in our lives and our psyche. So on the 16th, when we're talking about Neptune squaring Mercury, it's going to cause some sort of fogginess, dissolution, delusion in our thoughts and speech, elusiveness, scattered thinking. And the scattered thinking isn't like when Uranus would touch it, for instance. It feels like our thoughts could be scattered because our minds feel ungrounded. You know, Neptune is in Pisces, which, you know, it's its home sign. But Neptune isn't generally a planet we look for grounding, and neither is Pisces. So this squaring another mutable sign like Gemini can definitely make us feel like we aren't, our thoughts aren't grounded in reality. And in some ways that's beautiful, right? Because that can be a beautiful sense of creativity and imagination, which are so, so important for the soul. So that's a better way to use that energy, is to use it and harness it in order to say, how can I be more creative about the situation? And instead of having this rigid form of thinking that it has to be this way, how else could it be? You know, could it be this way? And once this aspect is, you know, kind of winding down, that can be a better, now we have more options, and we've seen it from a different perspective that is more giving, you know, there's more give to it than Saturn often likes to give. So then Venus squares Neptune, or Neptune squares Venus on the 17th. And so obviously Venus is the planet of love, beauty, and relationships and our values. So most likely this is going to affect our relationships with others. Neptune-Venus contacts can really show up as like having rose-colored glasses. So we may not be seeing things clearly as they are within our own values, within our relationships, within, you know, our art, or how we view love and beauty in the world. So if something is shown to you in a relationship that feels too good to be true around this time, give it some time. If something in a relationship is shown to you that feels like, you know, it's awful, well, trust your intuition on that. I'm going down a weird road there, so I don't want to really give too much advice in this short time frame. This could also, like I said, be very romantic, like creativity within your relationships, and Venus rules art. So like, once again, a beautiful use of this energy would be to put it towards your art, put it towards imagination, rather than looking at it and saying, oh, this is what I see right now, so this is the truth. My relationship is actually sucks because this person is showing me this aspect of themselves, or wow, this relationship is the one for me because they're so romantic. It's like, well, let's just put that aside and focus on how we can beautify our art and our lives and bring creativity and imagination. And then when Neptune squares the sun on the 20th, this affects all things sun. So our will, our determination. I could see people feeling very tired around this time. I feel like Sun Neptune really brings a sense of like, I mean, really around all of these, but especially for the sun, I could see us feeling like just needing to like rest and relax, because the sun is our life force and it's being squared by Neptune, right? And I mean, it is a 29th degree, which can sometimes be like a little stimulating, but I just see that, you know, we're going to be feeling more intuitive and creative and inward and just wanting to kind of chill, especially on that day. But during that day and the next few days, try to relax. Don't try to make sense of things. You know, like really from the 16th to the 20th, it really is a time to feel more creative and imaginative rather than being logical, for sure, which is hard when we're talking about Gemini, right? Like Gemini is like, oh, but this means this and this equals this. Okay, cool. Like this happens and this happens. And Neptune is like, no, we're just chilling, you know, like it's all connected. So, yeah, I would just say allow the thoughts and feelings to rise and wait until after they boil over to make any decisions if you need to, right? Like maybe you don't need to. There's a quote by Deepak Chopra that I found would be kind of fitting for these Neptune squares and even like the full moon, honestly, and really like any day in our lives. He says, if you obsess over whether you are making the right decision, you are basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. The universe has no fixed agenda. Once you make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, only a series of possibilities that shift with each thought, feeling, and action that you experience. Thank you, Deepak Chopra. That was beautiful. So let me know how all this resonates for you guys. And without further ado, let's get into the all signs portion of the video. I'll see you guys there. Hi Aries, welcome to your all signs portion of this reading. Now, I really want to recommend that you listen to the first part of the video to get a full picture of this full moon in Capricorn. I give a lot of information there that I do think is very pertinent to everybody. So, and I'm gonna try to get as much of it in here as possible, but obviously I spend a lot of time talking in the first part. So definitely check that out maybe after you listen to this, so you can get a more full idea of what this full moon is asking of you. All right, so this full moon in Capricorn is happening in your 10th house. Now, this is a part of a story that's been happening in your chart for 15 years now, since 2009 when Pluto entered Capricorn at the top of your, at the top of your chart. Okay. And so since then, since 2009, there has been a deep need for you to transform in the ways in your career, in your goals, in your achievements in life, your reputation, your public image. So definitely I see for a lot of Aries, if you're within this age, there's been some sort of public status change for you. I mean, I can assure you there's been some sort of massive change in the way that the public sees you. So like, you may have never wanted to be a mom, you became a mom. You never wanted to get married, you got married. You always wanted to be married and you got divorced. You went from, this career to another career. Some sort of public change that happened in the last 15 years that is very major for you. And now that's something that's been this story that's been going on, like I said, since 2009. This full moon, this lunation is building upon, or a culmination of, something that was planted or started, or an intention that happened around January 11th of 2024 when we had a new moon in Capricorn. So what's going to be coming up during this time is some sort of responsibility that you feel in this part of your chart. Like I said in the beginning of this video, we are going to have Pluto come back into Capricorn for the last time in our lifetime from September to November of this year. And so even though you've made all these transformations in your public image, in your career, in your outer achievements, your public life, there is something that's asking for you to come to balance. Number one, full moon is a check-in point to make sure that we're not neglecting something else in favor of something else, right? So for you, this is happening in your fourth house. You have the sun in the fourth house and the moon in the 10th house. So this would be a beautiful time to make sure that whatever you're achieving out in the world is not sacrificing the inner peace, the inner emotional fulfillment that you have, or that you want to have. And it also could be vice versa, but you've had this Pluto in the 10th house for 15 years, and then we had the new moon in Capricorn. We have a full moon in Capricorn on the 21st of June. We have a full moon in Capricorn on the 21st of July at 29 degrees. And then we have Pluto going back into Capricorn. So really, I feel like for many of you guys, the focus has been out in the world rather than internally inside. And so Cancer season is always a time for you guys to look to your fourth house, because Cancer rules your fourth house. So actually during this Cancer season, many of you guys could be moving, or you could be having something come up regarding this access of the 4th and 10th house. So how your career and your achievements are affecting your home life, and how your career and achievements are affecting your sense of inner emotional fulfillment and inner emotional framework. So as I was shuffling for you guys, I got the 8 and 7 of Pentacles, which is really cool because these are, actually now that I think about it, kind of makes sense. So these are both the cards of working hard, right? So 7 of Pentacles says that we've been working hard towards something diligently, and maybe we're unsatisfied with the results, or we're feeling like the results are coming a lot slower than we expected. And the 8 of Pentacles is saying that we are mastering something. We are mastering a craft. We are the apprentice. We are at work, working hard. So this shows to me that you guys have been working really hard over the last 15 years, but we'll just stick next to the last 6 months on building something, right? Because we have Capricorn, which is a builder, and 10th house at the top of your chart. So you've been very invested in building something in your life. And maybe you're feeling either one of these ways, that number one, you could be feeling like this is a time for you to continue like having to master your craft. And if that means feeling uncomfortable, right? Because Cancer is this sign, and the 4th house is a house of feeling comfortable at times, right? So we're striking this balance between feeling emotionally stable and comfortable and achieving something, having a responsibility to achieve something in the outer world. So, when we have this, you could be either feeling like, yes, I'm honing on my skills, I'm working on building something. And some of you may also be feeling, or just be feeling, that you've been working really hard, and that there has been such a focus on the work that you've done and the lack of the fulfillment, or not getting what you thought you would get from that. So I have two things to say if you feel that way. Number one, the one thing I've learned through having personal natal 10th house planet is that achievement is futile if we are not enjoying the process. And so if you're feeling like this and you're like, where's this? Like, yes, tend to those inner emotions. Like, yeah, I'm sad. I've been putting a lot of work in, and the Cancer element of this full moon will want you to balance out, to make sure that you're not just focusing on building and forgetting what's happening internally in your body and in your home, in your private life, your private sanctuary. So tend to those feelings, but also recognize that the process is the achievement. Right? Like, I think that a lot of times we have in our heads that once we reach a specific point, that we will then feel fulfilled and will then feel achieved. And then oftentimes, at least this has been my experience, is I will get there and I will say, oh, that was it. Like, I thought this would like be life-changing, but it's like, I just overlooked the whole process of it. So recognizing that like building and working is part of the journey, and how can we make sure that we're tending to our inner emotional experience during this time too, and not just focusing so hard on what we want to achieve in life, right? Now, the other thing I want to say is like Pluto going back into this part of your chart at the end of, in September to November of this year, it's asking for some completion in this part of your chart. So for me, like the full moons in this process, because we have one now and then one in July, are allowing us to, it's allowing something to be illuminated or revealed to us about this that most likely has to do with our emotional life, that maybe will be better balanced. And so when Pluto enters this part of your chart, you can really finish up this chapter in your or this book. I would say Pluto is like a chapter in your life in a way that feels more holistic to you and feels more fulfilling both internally and externally. Okay? All right, Aries, I hope you guys resonate with that. Let me know in the comments down below. Please make sure to like this video if you like it. And I'll see you guys next time. All right, so for Taurus, Sun, and Rising, this full moon is happening in your 9th house. Now, before we begin, I do really want to recommend that you listen to the first part of this reading when I talked about the full moon in Capricorn in detail. There's a lot more detail in there, and I think that's really important, especially for this full moon, since we have another full moon in Capricorn in July, and Pluto's moving back into Capricorn for the last and final time in our lives. So definitely go ahead and do that if you haven't listened already. And that'll just give you a better understanding of what this full moon means in the grand scheme of things. So let's talk about the 9th house, shall we? You've had a lot of change and transformation happen in this part of your chart over the last 15 years when Pluto entered here. So some of the 9th house themes are travel, wisdom, philosophy, higher education, law, religion, our spiritual beliefs, our belief systems, learning, higher learning, our ethics, relating to experiences that are completely new. So like oftentimes we say traveling for this, or long distance traveling, because long distance traveling allows us to come into contact with cultures and people and languages and ways of living that are not common to us. And so they help expand our horizons. So there's been an expansion of your horizons in very deep ways since 2009. And starting the beginning of this year, so January 11th, when we had the new moon in Capricorn, there's been a little part of that story, right? So, and this full moon in Capricorn is helping illuminate how far you've come and what changes have been made, or maybe you'll get a new piece of the information here. And like I said in the beginning of this video, while this is important to recognize that full moons are a time of reflection, because we have another full moon in July that has much more of a reflective quality on it, this one might be a great time for you to reevaluate, reorganize, or readjust any belief systems, any wisdom, any higher education, any of those things I mentioned that need to be readjusted during this time. And then when we have the full moon in July, there's a deep reflection that can happen. And when Pluto enters Capricorn from September to November of this year for the last and final time of our lives, there can really be a completion of this in a way that's more holistic. Now, when a full moon comes, it's an opposition. So for you, it's happening, the full moon's in your 9th house, but then you have the sun in your in your 3rd house. And so for me, the best use of this full moon is to recognize, what wisdom, what belief systems, what travel, what higher learning have I learned over the last 6 months or 15 years that I can bring down into my immediate environment in a way that it's not so imbalanced, that I'm not so focused on these, unknown territories, and are also focusing on the people and situations that are around me at all times. So, the 3rd house is your immediate environment. So that could be people you live with, your siblings, social interactions, like light interactions, neighbors, communicating with other people, right? So how can I build this balance between everything that I've learned and that's transformed in me since 2009, but really since January of 2024, in a way that I can communicate it to others effectively, in the way that I can bring that down into my daily life better, right? Okay, so let's get a card for you and see what advice we can give Tauruses during this full moon in Capricorn. So let's see here. What advice can we give our Tauruses? Okay, strength. So this is a major arcana. So what I'm feeling here definitely for you guys is that there has been a great importance to the things that have happened in the last 6 months in this part of your chart. Your belief systems, higher education, travel is teaching you something. Your exploration of the world has taught you, of belief systems, of expanding your horizons, has taught you something that is really, really poignant. And when I see the strength card, it's a card of, yes, inner strength that has been cultivated or that is being cultivated during this time. In here, she is taming a lion. And so a lot of times this card can be about our instincts, our these like survival instincts that we have and that are very primal. And this is about learning how we can manage, right? She has tamed the lion. So obviously not repressing, she's not like beating the lion up, but in her strength, she's found a way to have compassion for this very primal survival instinct of the self in a way that is still loving and compassionate, and it's not running from this, right? So this to me feels like there is something that is being asked of you that has happened over the last 6 months that has maybe you've seen these primal urges come back up. And you know, the ninth house, even though it's ruled by Sagittarius, can have this kind of refinement, right? Like, I mean, it is not just education, it's higher education. It's not just, you know, random rules, it's law. So it's things that have been put into structures and serve a higher belief system. And so maybe throughout this process, you have learned that there are these primal instincts that were left behind that needed to be integrated into the self in a way that was more positive and influential for your immediate environment. And so if you haven't been seeing that, then this full moon and then the next full moon, if this full moon doesn't really get there, may be showing you how that balance can be better achieved. And then, like I said, when Pluto comes in here from September to November, there is really a completion of this long storyline about the ninth house that can finally come to a close. There's just like last piece that just needs to be integrated. It needs to be let go of or transformed in a way that you can move forward into the next phase of your life completely. All right, Taurus, let me know how that resonates for you guys down below. Make sure you like this video if you like it, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, Geminis. So this full moon is happening in your 8th house. Now, I deeply recommend that you guys listen to the first part of this video where I talk in depth about this full moon in Capricorn. There's a lot of things at play here, and I can't repeat them all for every single sign, so make sure you check that out if you want a more holistic understanding of why this full moon, I believe, is so important in the bigger scheme of things. And I'll give you a synopsis really quick. So we have another full moon in Capricorn that's happening on July 21st at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and then we have Pluto re-entering Capricorn for the last and final time at the 29th degree from September to November of this year. So because of that, I think that this story is a part of a much larger story that happened in 2009. But if we're talking about this lunation cycle, it's something that started beginning of this year. So January 11th, we had a new moon in Capricorn in your 8th house. So this is kind of the peak of that storyline. For some of you guys, maybe this peak won't come till the July 21st, but I think you guys have an inkling of what this has to do about. Now, since 2009, Pluto has been transforming the way that you merge with other people on a deep, deep level. The 8th house is our psyche. So Pluto being there has been wanting us to transform our psyche. Like, that's pretty intense. And in doing so, we've had to learn how to work within these intimate bonds and share finances, share resources with other people, to give and take, learn the balance of give and take within relationships. You know, yes, joint ventures, joint property, joint goals in life. But really at the core of this is like, how do we learn to receive and how do we learn to give in a way that feels good in our dynamic? So whether that's this is generally within deeper relationships or maybe even business partners. So people that we are really deeply obligated to in some way, right? Like we have these contracts with them. So this could even be like a bank because, you know, joint ventures and finances could include a bank, but at the core of the 8th house, it's our psyche and merging on a deep emotional level. This is a house of secrets, right? So, and deep emotions as well. So the 4th house is our emotional foundations, yes, but the 8th house is the deep emotional well of how we relate to others, because the 2nd water house is about other people. So in the 4th house, we set up our emotional foundations. In the 8th house, we set up our emotional foundations, right? So now we've got this storyline that started from January 11th of this year regarding everything I just talked about, that is now coming to some sort of peak culmination, some sort of illumination or revelation is happening during this time. And you're getting an opportunity to readjust anything that we need to in order to go about this in a more holistic and balanced way, so that when we have the next full moon in Capricorn and then Pluto going into Capricorn for the final time, we can really start closing out this chapter of our lives in a way that's meaningful and holistic. And yeah, it just allows us to start the next Pluto transit in a big way. You know, obviously we've had Pluto in Aquarius, so we've gotten inklings of it, but now it's going to be in Aquarius from November of 2024 until 2044. So, and that's going to be the new book of your life, you know, so the new series, the whatever installment of book in your series of your life. Really went on okay, yeah, I got into a zone there with with the 8th house. So when this full moon happens in your 8th house, it is looking at the sun in your 2nd house. So here's the thing. This is what I know about Geminis, okay? Now, I definitely know we get, you know, I'm a Gemini sun. We get a lot of flack for a lot of things, and I think that a lot of people can't see this like naivete underneath a lot of Gemini energy, right? We are like the adolescence of the zodiac circle. And so people, you know, don't recognize that even if we seem crazy, chaotic, or whatever, that underneath that there is, unless you have a lot of other, you know, Scorpio and, you know, like outer, I would say relational to transpersonal signs. So like, no, I really would say transpersonal. So unless you have a lot of like Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces in your chart, if you're a Gemini sun or rising, even moon, there is a very good likelihood that the chaos is not there's no intention to manipulate or hurt other people. There is like this like little kid inside almost that is just like doing the best they can, and like change. Yes, there's change from moment to moment because there are new perceptions. And so what this Pluto in the 8th house has done, in my opinion, is shown us, or is trying to show us, that there is some sort of a deeper emotional current required in order to maintain relationships to in a way that is more fulfilling for us. And so this full moon, looking back on the 2nd house, is like, remember not to give yourself completely away when we are merging. Now, this may seem like it's not common for Geminis to do this. A lot of people look at Geminis and think, yes, they're very independent. They can really hold their own within deep, intimate bonds, within partnerships. And for some of you guys, that may be true, for sure. And maybe you've done the work. But I also know that Gemini, like I said, they're like the adolescents of the zodiac circle. So there is no, it's almost like there is a difficulty in maintaining a healthy bond and a healthy connection to self. So like when we merge, we just give ourselves away, right? Whereas like other signs, like maybe Scorpios, it's like, yes, they can merge, but there's this like anchor to the self. And I feel like with Geminis, because we're so perceptive and we just like, the immutable air can get lost in the wind, oftentimes we find ourselves overdoing the intimacy and merging with another. Or the opposite, where we're so deeply embedded in our independence that we don't want anybody else. And when our partners are trying to engage with us, we are just so done with wanting to engage with them. Or we're just like, no, I don't want to date. I don't want to do any of this. Like, I want to do my own thing. So the 2nd house is now, instead of merging, it's about your money. It's about your values. It's about your habits, the way that you make money, income. So instead of joint ventures and joint income, the 2nd house is about all of it regarding you. And so when this full moon is happening, and again in July, it's asking to make sure that however you're closing out this Pluto and Capricorn cycle is is not by giving yourself completely to the others, to joint income. So like, once again, it's like that can look like you know, you are depending too much on your partner's income, on loans, on things that are not your money. And so then this full moon is asking you, like, is that what's happening? Like, it's literally shining a light on this and saying, hey, is this what's happening? Do we need to find more balance and, you know, think about how we can support ourselves physically better, financially better on our own? It could also be the opposite, which it could also be the opposite. Like, you're not allowing yourself to merge with anybody and to feel taken care of financially in any sort of way. Like, no, I'm going to do it all on my own. So like, those are the questions that I would be asking myself during this time, because it feels like, you know, having Capricorn in the 8th house, I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but it's like the questions I asked is like, how have I sacrificed emotional nurturing and comfortability in order to achieve something? Or vice versa, how have I sacrificed achieving something in order to stay safe and comfortable? And for you guys, it's happening in the financial sector between you and others, but also, like I said, your values versus our values, and intimacy with another person. So these are just some questions that I would be asking during this time, is that, you know, like I said, just how are you showing up in this like independence versus like giving yourself away? Because this is, like I said, something that we've been working on for 15 years, but Pluto is bringing that to an end. And so we're getting such beautiful opportunities to just check in with the self and see, like, am I allowing intimacy? Am I allowing myself to trust the other on a deep level? And like, this could be within partnership, but like, am I allowing myself to be taken care of by other people? And so much of our money blocks have to do with our own ability to be able to receive. And once again, like, people just don't recognize how much Gemini have a difficulty with this sense of giving and receiving. I actually think that most Geminis, healthy Geminis, are much more likely to get stuck in the giving and to give too much and not allow for that return to come back to them. So just focusing on that is very, very important right now, in my opinion. Okay, so I always go on a tangent with you guys, and you know, it's honestly because I'm channeling my Gemini energy, which is to talk, but I also I've said this before, but I just have such a reverence for the sign of Gemini. And if you especially have your sun in Gemini and you don't feel that way, that would be a huge part of your chart that you can work on, because our sun sign is so important, especially as we evolve and get older. It's literally like our purpose and who we're meant to embody in this world. So as I've gotten older, I just like look at the sign of Gemini with such reverence, and I just deeply understand this part of myself in a much more deep way than I did before Pluto went into our 8th house and I got into psychology and, like, you know, psyche and all this stuff. So anyway, let's get an advice card for our Geminis for this full moon in Capricorn. Wow, that's so amazing, you guys. Okay. Yeah, so the star is a major arcana. So, I mean, I'm not really super surprised that you guys have major arcana during this time, because you have Jupiter in Gemini, and we just got done with having all these planets in Gemini, and now they're moving into your 2nd house. Yes. But, you know, there is a sense to me that Gemini this card, let me just tell you, this card is a card of hope. It's like the the light at the end of the tunnel. Faith renewed is a term that comes to me because this happens after the tower. So the tower, everything falls apart. The foundations in which we were standing on that were not sustainable, that were actually not as secure as we thought, have fallen below our feet. And so then the next card is this. And this is faith renewed. Understanding that whatever chaos we're moving away from, we are starting to actually feel quite hopeful again. This card also makes me feel like Gemini right now would do really well. I mean, obviously you're here, so you're doing it, but leaning into some astrology or tarot or other esoteric human design, things like this during this time. I think that Geminis are finding a real passion for that, and they're finding healing in that. And if you haven't, I would say, I mean, like, you're here, but I would definitely say that that's supported in your life right now to lean on. I just really love this for you guys and for me. Yeah, I just talked about how I have so many words, and I just don't have words now. It's a feeling of, you're feeling a lot better. And there's been a turn of events. And even if things are still crumbling, like the tower moment still isn't through, you're sensing that, there could be a light at the end of this tunnel. And that's amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I feel speechless now, so I'm just gonna leave it there. All right, you guys, let me know how that resonates, and make sure to like this video if you like this video, and I will see you guys next time. All right, so for my Cancer, Sun and Rising, this full moon is happening in your 7th house. Now, I really do recommend that you listen to the first part of this video where I talk more in depth about this full moon in Capricorn. There's so much information in there, and I just feel like because this full moon is so important in my opinion and relates to Pluto going back into Capricorn, that it would do everybody well to really listen to that first part of this video and get a more holistic understanding of how things can play out for you. So, like I said, this is happening in your 7th house, and Pluto has been in your 7th house since 2009. Right now it's in Capricorn, or in Aquarius, but it's moving back into your 7th house from September to November to finish up this book that it's been writing in your 7th house. So from 2009 to 2024, there has been a massive storyline that's happened with tons of chapters, tons of ups and downs, new characters coming, new characters or old characters leaving. And within that, you have been learning how to relate to others in bonds, right? So business partners, relationships with, deep friendships, and your romantic relationships, of course, but really just when you meet the other, how do you meet them? That's been a huge thing in your life. And when they meet you, how do you respond, right? So on a smaller scale, there was a new moon in your 7th house in January of this year of 2024. So in the last 6 months, there's been a storyline, and this is like the peak of the storyline. Now, July 21st, we have another full moon in Capricorn, which I talked about in the beginning of this video, but that could be the peak, or there could be 2 peaks where you're having two revelations, 2 illuminations. This one, in my opinion, is much more conducive to a readjustment, reevaluation, and a readjustment or a reorganization that needs to happen if something is illuminated. Generally, during a full moon, we just talk more about reflection because that is what we generally recommend when there is an opposition. It is a time of reflection, but because of certain things that I already, I talked about in the beginning of this video, I think that this one is much more conducive to actually, making a detour if necessary, rather than waiting till the next full moon in Capricorn, which is definitely more reflective period. And So beginning of this year, storyline regarding your 7th house. So something happening within relationships, within how you want to relate to other people started earlier this year. And now it's coming to some sort of culmination, some peak. There's a revelation, there's illumination on something. And you're being asked, yeah, what do I want to let go of from this? What do I want to keep? What do I want to let go of? And is there anything that needs to be reorganized during this time? I feel for many Cancers, this is not just happening within your house of, like, within your immediate relationship or romantic relationship. It could be happening also at work with any adversary in your work, because the 7th house is also like open enemies. So any open adversaries that you've had to deal with, they have shown you a lot over really the last 15 years. But if we talk about a smaller scale, since January 11th of this year, it's Cancer season. So when I think about all these planets coming into your 1st house, I think about the balance that's being needed, that this full moon is asking to strike between you, your sense of self, and other people. Now, this is also because Pluto's been in your 7th house. This is a balance because the 7th house looks back on the 1st house, right? So this is a balance of, like, how can I maintain self in a relationship versus how, when somebody else is in front of me, and, you know, how can I relate to them and also stay within myself. So there's been a sense of self-development that has needed to happen in order to be able to relate to others in a way that feels healthy for you. And so this full moon, before we close out the Pluto and Capricorn saga from 2009 to 2024, you're being asked, how do I balance my emotional fulfillment and the responsibility that I feel like I have to others in relationships, and vice versa. So how do I balance their emotional needs while maintaining responsibility to myself, to my attitude, to my outlook on life, and not just completely thinking about them or myself, right? This axis of Capricorn and Cancer is this axis of, like, responsibility in some sense, because you've got, you know, Saturn ruling, and then Saturn ruling Capricorn, and then the moon ruling Cancer. So really everything I talked about in the beginning of this video about, you know, some of the questions I said you should ask yourself is, how have I sacrificed emotional nurturing and comfortability for achievements out there? So for you guys, it's like, how have I sacrificed my emotional nurturing and comfortability in order to achieve something in my relationships? Or how have I sacrificed, you know, my relationships in order to maintain feeling safe and comfortable in myself? So this is something that's coming up for you guys for sure. And, you know, having Pluto in a 7th house, I'm going through that with Pluto in Aquarius, is such a deep and meaningful transit that it, like, oftentimes, I mean, obviously it's been 15 years, but after Pluto goes through our angular houses, we really have had to dig deep, right? So this isn't about, like, you know, I need to let go of a relationship, I need to let go of a job. No. Pluto is like, how do we stop entering relationships in a way that is not conducive to our own lives? Or, you know, how do I maintain myself? Like, this is asking for something really deep of you, right? And you know that, because if you've tried to change something superficially by just saying, oh, this partner just wasn't good, oh, well, you know, this relationship was just toxic, that's why it didn't work out, but not really looking at the undercurrents of that, you know, Pluto has just kept sending you bad person after bad person after bad person until you recognize that there is a deeper pattern at play, right? So let's get an advice card for my Cancers. Let's see here. Cancers, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Advice for this full moon in Capricorn. So this is really cool because this is the card of, I feel like I say that every time I get a card. I'm like, this is cool. This is interesting. This is amazing. This is a card of rest and contemplation after a period of it's like after a period of feeling really down or having some upheaval in your life. There is a sense that like a part of you needs to rest, which is very interesting because this is your season, right? So it's like there's a and obviously this is for the full moon, so I'm not saying for your entire season you're gonna feel this way, but I think that it would do you especially well. I would say this for everybody, but since this card came up for you guys, is to really reflect on what is happening in your life and to take the rest that is required for you to move forward in a way that's meaningful. The swords are the air element. So meditation would be anything that can help soothe or calm the mind would be super helpful for you guys during this time. Come back to what I said about how difficult the Pluto in the 7th house can feel and recognize like how far you've come, how much you've endured during this transit, and allow yourself to just feel that, to reflect on that. Like, this is not for the faint of heart, like, and if you've been working, and if you're watching this video, I know you're one of those Cancers who has been trying to really work on this part of you, that like how you relate to other people, what you allow in relationships, what you want to show up as in relationships. Just take a moment to rest, contemplate how far you've come, and where do you want to go from here? Yeah, where do you want to go from here? All right, Cancers, I hope that resonates. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It helps me out a lot, and I know that you like it. And that helps me know what kind of videos to make. So I will see you guys next time. All right, so for my Leo sun, moon, and rising, this full moon is happening in your 6th house. Now, I really am recommending everybody listen to the first part of this video where I talk in depth about this full moon in Capricorn, because this full moon in specific, I think is really important in the way that I can't say it in every single all signs, which is why I said it in the beginning in the general reading, because we have a full moon in Capricorn in July, and then we've got Pluto moving into Capricorn for the final time at the 29th degree in September until November of this year for the last time in our lives. I feel like we need to understand how we can most effectively use this full moon versus the next full moon and how that relates to Pluto and Capricorn. Now, of course, I'll give you a synopsis in this reading. So we have this full moon in Capricorn in your 6th house. Now, I want to say, like, I think that and I do this too, when we talk about major transits in our lives, we often talk about angular houses. So 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, and for good reason. Those are cardinal houses, and they tend to really be turning points in our lives. What's interesting, though, is that, the 6th house is also, they're all important, but the 6th house is pretty major in the sense that it is the last individual personal house. Once we get to the 7th to the 12th house, we're in relational and transpersonal houses. And so the 1st through 6th are really of the self, right? Like, we don't get to how we relate to others till the 7th and on. And so when we're looking at the 6th, like, yes, it's everything that we always talk about, right? Like, it's your health, your fitness, your daily habits, your pets, your work environment, your sense of usefulness, giving service, diet. All of these things are very much the 6th house, but I think that we often miss the fact that this is really the last house on a psychological level that we get to form ourselves before getting into partnership with the other. And so since we've had Pluto in this part of our chart since 2009, there's been this very intense storyline around these sixth house themes, right? So like health, illness, wellness, fitness, all the nesses apparently, pets, work environments, what kind of work environments we want to be in, what kind of jobs we want to have, what kind of service we want to give, how we want to be of service to the world, what we are willing to sacrifice for, because the sixth house is a house of hard work and sacrifice, and we have Capricorn naturally ruling that house. So that means that it is just inundated with Saturn giving us more responsibility, wanting us to work harder. So like having Saturn, I mean, if you have Saturn in Capricorn as a Leo rising, then you have, we have this tendency to work too hard. We have a tendency to sacrifice too much. We have too much responsibility in work, like all of these things. But even if you don't have Saturn in the sixth, and you're a Leo rising, Capricorn naturally rules your sixth house. So, I just wanted to mention that, this story that we've been having since 2009 in the sixth house is coming to a close when Pluto enters and then leaves Capricorn for the last time from September and November of this year. And so what this full moon is giving us an opportunity to do, and the next full moon as well in Capricorn in July, is to really reflect on the last remnants of what we know needs to be reflected on, transformed, changed, let go of. Now, on a smaller scale, this is a storyline that's been happening since January 11th of this year. So think back to January 11th of this year, what was happening regarding your sixth house matters. And now you might see that it is coming up for review, culmination. There's a revelation of some sort in this part of your chart. And this full moon, as opposed to the next full moon in Capricorn, is much better for a detour of some sort, or a feeling of like, okay, I'm seeing this and I want to readjust this. I want to reorganize this. Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing something now that I wasn't seeing before because the full moon is illuminated in my sixth house that yes, this needs to happen. And also, whenever we have a full moon, it's an opposition between the sun and the moon. So there is a sense of balance that's necessary. And so because we've had all this energy in the sixth house, and this full moon is happening in the sixth, but the sun is sitting in your 12th, and Cancer season is really all the Cancer planets are in your 12th house. So the balance that I think could be really struck here is between the 6th and the 12th. So what does the 12th represent? It's endings, healing, closure, your subconscious, self-limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, things that are hidden from us. And so what I see this as is like, have you had so much responsibility? Have you sacrificed so much for your physical well-being that you have lost touch with the subconscious, that you have lost touch with the fact that your wellness isn't just your physical body and your mind. It's much, much deeper than that. And it's not just your emotions. It's much, much deeper than that. The subconscious underlies all of these things. Subconscious belief systems that constantly keep us in the form of or situations of self-sabotage will affect your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health. And so this is asking, like, are we balancing one for the other? Or you could be on the opposite end, and this full moon can show you like, hey, you've been focusing so much on resting, on healing, on closure and endings and grief and your subconscious world and your dream world that you've forgot to take care of this body that you're in. That there's something to be said about the responsibility that we have as humans to our bodies. We incarnated, or whatever you believe, into a body, and now we have to learn to take care of it. And it's not just about doing subconscious work, but it's about also eating good food, walking, doing exercises that are not just to get us buff. I mean, sure, you can do them if you want to just get buff, but for me, it's like, what kind of exercises keep our joints healthy, keep us mobile and fluid in our movements, you know, like tension in the body results in tension in the mind. Tension in the mind results in tension in the body. I'm speaking as a Leo rising from not just knowledge, but very personal experience when I talk about these things. So I want you guys to you know, learn from someone who has, and maybe you have as well, gone through this illness journey for a very long time, like I have. As soon as Pluto entered the 6th house, I got a bunch of autoimmune disorders. Yeah, definitely just feel like there is a, you know, desire to ask you to take responsibility for something, because this is Saturn, right? And or Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. There is a seriousness, like in what ways have we been neglecting our health and the ways that we take care of our bodies. And so we can balance this out during this time. Okay, I think that's it. Now let's get a card for advice for Leos. Now I just want to say that this full moon doesn't mean that you've been neglecting one or the other. It's just asking you to reflect upon that. And if you're like, I'm doing great, I'm taking care of both, then awesome. You reflect and you say, I'm doing good. And you know, there's nothing that needs to be reorganized or readjusted. And you're ahead of the curve, because when Pluto comes back into our 6th house for the final time, it is really this like desire for completion in this part of our chart, so that we can move forward into fully having Pluto in the 7th, which is going to be a turning point for us for sure, as it will be for everybody. So how can you work on solidifying, because this is Capricorn, on solidifying the self, the body, the mind of like all things that encompass yourself, so that when we fully move into Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years, we can show up in a way that feels strong and feels whole, so that we can get ready to engage with the other from that space. All right, so I generally believe that, I keep saying I'm going to get into this, but I genuinely believe that there is a lot of Leos are recognizing that there is they're capable of so much more in this life. There is a sense of like achievement that goes beyond our career. Like there is almost like a spiritual awakening, or like we're attempting to get to this like higher level of consciousness, to do something that is for the higher good. And we've got all this plan on, you know, Jupiter and Gemini, so that kind of plays into this too. But it's like, I feel like we're reaching a really significant stage of our lives. Pluto in the 7th house, it's an angular house. And so, you know, these decisions that we're making, especially while we're having this full moon, and, you know, Jupiter and Gemini is about decisions and options and choices, are really asking us to use that level of consciousness that we've achieved, this higher level of consciousness, this higher level of awareness. Okay, I just got something. There is a higher level of awareness that you may have, but you are not using it in your life. So like, this is actually much more common than people assume. That like, oh, people think like once you reach a lot higher level of awareness, then that's it. And it's like, yeah, but how do we harness that into reality, into our bodies, into a physical form? So like, you may have this level of awareness about your health, about the job environment that you want to be in, about, you know, these things, that your pets or whatever, your diet, and yet your life is not matching that level of awareness. And so this can extend to other parts of our lives. So even though this is happening in the 6th house, this can extend to you have a higher level of awareness about what you want to achieve in this world, but you are not making the decisions that show that you have that level of awareness. So you have the level of awareness, but your actions show that you don't have that level of awareness. And so your life doesn't look the way that you think it should look because you're like, but I have this awareness. But are you acting upon it? And so I think we're getting to a point in our lives with all this Capricorn energy coming to an end, is that there's a significant decision or decisions that we have to make regarding the responsibility that we have to bring that awareness down into reality and use it in our lives to not just serve ourselves, but to serve everybody. I don't even feel like I need a tarot card, but I'm gonna get one anyways, okay? Because I just feel like you guys got 15 minutes of that. All right, so it's just one last piece of advice here, okay? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So the World, this is a card of completion. I just got chills. Do I even need to say anything? Do I even need to say anything? Like, this is a card of completion. Goals achieved, starting something new. You have attained so much. Think back to everything that you've attained in this cycle. We're starting something new. We're reaching a new stage that is going to, I just got chills again, that is going to change the trajectory of our lives if we choose it, right? If we choose to take that. But the World card just tells me that this full moon is really about reflecting on how far you've come in this cycle. This is the last card in the major arcana before we start back at the Fool. So it's like, you know, starting a new journey. The Fool is about starting a new journey. And so this is asking us to really reflect on the change that we've made, be proud of our achievements, and recognize that we are coming to a new point of decision making, okay? Okay. That is what I have for Leo and Leo risings. I will see you guys, and moon. I'll see you guys next time. And make sure you like this video, you hit the like button if you like this video, so that I know you like this video and I will continue to make videos like this. All right, I'll see you guys next time. All right, so for my Virgo sun, moon, and rising. Now, I need you guys to tell me how you're feeling right now. Like, no context. I just want to know how you're feeling. I just do. And let me know in the comments, please, down below, because I'm feeling some wobbliness with you guys. Like, I don't know. I was actually really proud of myself because I had like no technology issues today, and that never happens. Every time I do something with YouTube, I have a lot of technology issues. And you know me, when I go out into the world, almost every single time I call customer service or I go up to someone and they need to use their computer, I would say 80% of the time their computer crashes, something happens. I think I have some sort of a weird energy with technology, especially when I'm like channeling this stuff. But anyway, today I had no issues. And I kept running into issues with you guys. Anyway, so let's get into your guys' reading. I just want to know what you guys are if you guys are going through good things, bad things, you know, like I'm not trying to lean it any sort of way. I want to know how you guys are feeling and just why I keep having I keep having issues with you guys. Maybe other people keep having issues with you guys too. I don't know. Like maybe you have a lot of issues in your life right now. I don't know. I keep thinking, and as I'm saying that, I keep staring at something that says 7th house. So maybe you guys, maybe a lot of people in your life are feeling frustrated with you right now. I'm sorry. I love you guys. I have to recognize that when I'm in this mode, there's a reason for things. Yeah, maybe you guys are feeling a lot of frustration with other people right now. Maybe people are feeling very frustrated with you. Let me know if that resonates. Okay, let's get started with this reading though. Yes, so full moon in Capricorn in your 5th house. Now, I'm recommending to every single person that they listen to or watch the first part of this video, in which I go into full detail about the full moon in Capricorn, because specifically for this full moon, I feel like it's really important to understand how it relates to next month's full moon in Capricorn, as well as Pluto moving back into Capricorn for the last and final time of our lives in September of this year until November of this year. Obviously, I'll give a brief synopsis of what that is going to look like, but yeah, definitely listen to that first part of the video if you haven't already. So, Pluto moved into this part of your chart in 2009. Now, as somebody who did also experience a Pluto in the 5th house transit myself before 2009, I don't remember the exact dates, but it was the Pluto cycle before that. I have some experience in that. And what I find interesting is so Capricorn naturally rules your 5th house. So automatically, and I'm talking about pre-2009, when it comes to 5th house stuff, so romance, love, play, entertainment, creativity, your children, having a childlike spirit, self-expression, all of these things are always feeling Saturnian to you. So maybe you were brought up in a way that made you feel like you can't have fun unless you work hard first. You can't enjoy yourself. Your sense of creativity was very work-like in a way, it wasn't you really allowing yourself to let loose and feel joy. You almost feel like you had to work for it in order to feel that way. And so over the last 15 years, Pluto has been trying to transform this part of your chart. And so you've probably seen a lot of fluctuations here. Maybe even if you have children, in your relationship with your children, maybe you never thought you would have children and you decided to have children during this time period. Maybe you felt like there was a lot of seriousness in your relations to children, and that has been shifting and transforming and changing during this time. And what this full moon is doing is it's bringing up an opportunity for us to reflect on some of the changes that we've made since the new moon in Capricorn on January 11th, 2024 in the same part of our chart, and where we are now with this full moon in Capricorn. And we'll get another chance in July when we have another full moon in Capricorn, and another chance when Pluto re-enters Capricorn. But really, those last two transits are a winding down of energies in a bigger way, a sense of completion that's wanting to happen. And sometimes in order, what happens with Pluto, especially when it's at the 29th degree, which is where it'll be when it enters Pluto enters Capricorn again. When it's at the 29th degree, there's a sense of extremes. And so full moons are such a beautiful time because the sun and the moon are in opposition. And so they're asking for some sort of balance. So during full moons, I always look to the other side of the chart where the sun is. And the sun for you guys is in the 11th house, which rules groups, clubs that you're a part of, organizations that you belong to, any humanitarian work that you do, technology, the internet here as well, and your hopes and wishes for the future. Now, what this could look like is that you've spent possibly, now maybe you've overcorrected and you're experiencing too much joy. I know that sounds crazy, but you're indulging too much in the 5th house things, possibly. This is for some of you guys. Indulging too much in the joys and pleasures of life and not having this broader 11th house vision of the hopes and wishes of the future, what you want to accomplish in this world. The organizations that you want to belong to, the humanitarianism work that you want to do, your sense of belonging in a society, in something bigger than yourself. Because the 5th house is the house of Leo, it's the house of the self and our expression and our life and our romance and our creativity. And so, if you have transformed the way that you deal with that, and now you allow yourself to have fun and you allow yourself to really enjoy life and enjoy the present moment, that's so important, right? And also, we don't want to lose sight of something bigger than just this present moment. something for us to look forward to have hopes for in the future, to, you know, do something for outside of our immediate circle, you know? And so if you have been leaning one way or the other, this full moon would be a great opportunity to reevaluate any kind of balance that needs to be had. So maybe it's the opposite, like maybe you're not having fun at all. And I don't see that for a lot of Virgos, because so much energy has been in this part of your chart for so long, you know, especially with Pluto. But that could very much be like right now you're feeling like you're thinking too much about the future, you're putting too much effort into your groups that you're a part of, the social organizations that you belong to. And you need to bring it back to the self, enjoy the present moment, focus on creativity. But there is something that is happening in between these two. And in the first reading I did for you guys, I want to say I got the 9 of Cups for your reading. I'm going to do another one though, because I feel like I'm supposed to redo this reading, but I want to say the wish fulfillment is what the 9 of Cups is about. So I also want to say maybe there is some sort of wish that is being fulfilled in your either 5th or 11th house. So if you're doing anything on the internet or with organizations, maybe something is coming to fruition with that. Or it could be a wish fulfillment in your 5th house of romance, love, play, creativity, entertainment, your kids. I also want to mention Pluto going through your 5th house can mean huge transformations, not just in your relationships with children, but also huge transformation in the lives of your children or one of your kids. I just want to point that out. And so, yeah, there's wish fulfillment. There's a desire to be indulgent and to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And the 9 of Cups is an emotional card. So it's fruit to you know, indulge in the fruits of your emotional labor. You know, like maybe there's been a lot of emotional work that you've done in order to get to a place where you can enjoy life, where you can have fun. And so, like, you know, recognizing that you've gotten this far, and also making sure that we're not losing track of the opposite sign, okay? And like I said, it could go vice versa, but I feel like that is more so what's happening. Is there anything else that I wanted to say for you guys? I don't think so. Let's get into the tarot card. Okay, that wanted to come out. Interesting. For Virgos, for this full moon in Capricorn. Okay, I see money. I see money coming in, or, you know, this is a sense of abundance. So, like, you guys maybe, even if you're not having your wish fulfillment equal to money, or like some sort of windfall here, as you can see all the pendulums falling from the sky, even if that's not it, there's a sense of abundance or achievement that is, and I was just saying that, right? Like maybe there's just a sense of achievement that you've had recently as you're reflecting on all the work that you've done to get to where you are. Or this could literally be that you're getting a lot of money, or you're getting a raise, or you're making money in new ways. But more than that is that this is a sense of true abundance, because money and abundance are not always the same thing, right? So this is a feeling of abundance. And I also got the Knight of Wands. And so the Knight of Wands can feel like it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's an impulsive energy almost. And the wands are having to do with the fire element. It's the fire element. So when I look at the Knight of Wands, I think that maybe there is, wow, this is so interesting, you guys. I'm seeing so much like passion. I'm seeing creativity. And yes, this could lead to impulsive decisions. But I'm sensing that there's something that you guys are moving towards in your life that you feel passionate about. Find something that you are passionate about, that you do want to take inspired action on, that you do want like to adventure towards. It's like I could see many Virgos like recently having this idea and then now wanting to take inspired and aligned action towards that idea. And maybe that idea is going to bring the money, right? Like maybe that's what this is showing me. And this card is just, the Knight of Wands just feels like courage to me. It feels like courage and going after some sort of idea that you've had. And like I said, if that doesn't resonate, then maybe there is a need to garner some courage and maybe some confidence to go into in a direction that feels aligned for you. And maybe there's money on the other side, or maybe you're getting money and then that's allowing you to go towards this inspired action. Okay, so let me know how that resonates for you guys, and make sure to please like and subscribe if you guys like content like this. Okay, Virgos, I'll see you next time. All right, so for my Libra sun, moon, and rising, this full moon is happening in your 4th house. Now, I really am recommending everybody to listen to the first part of this video in which I talked in depth about the full moon in Capricorn, how it relates to the next full moon in Capricorn in July, and how it relates to Pluto moving back into Capricorn for the final time of our lives in September to November of this year. And so I definitely recommend you listen to that so you get a more holistic view of this full moon in Capricorn. I will try to bring in like a synopsis of that for sure for each sign, but yeah, I just definitely recommend that, especially for this full moon. So this full moon is, like I said, happening in your 4th house. Now, Pluto has been telling a story in this 4th house since 2009. So you guys may have more than other people felt an upheaval, transformation, ups and downs in your home life, in your private life, right? So what does the 4th house represent? The 4th house is your home life, your private life. It's your physical home. So you guys may have moved a lot in the last 15 years, more so than, your friend who's a Scorpio rising or something, You guys may have had a lot of deep emotional upheavals about your sense of emotional safety, right? The 4th house is the first water house. So it's your deep, and then it's the lowest point in the chart. So it's your deep emotional needs, how you feel emotionally secure and stable in life. And so you naturally have Capricorn on the house cusp, which brings a sense of Capricorn into your 4th house things. So oftentimes with Libras, what happens, and especially Libra risings, but as a Libra sun or moon, you might feel this as well, is that the upbringing can represent a Saturnian so it can represent a Saturnian way. So there could be that there was a lot of hard work had to be done as a child, right? The emotional upbringing, there wasn't a lot of emotional nurturance. So you kind of internalize that as your emotional foundation, as that there's responsibility, there's hardness, there's coldness in that, there's a sense of aloofness. And often Libra, it's an air sign, and even though it rules the 7th house, there can be, when it comes to their own internal world, a sense of compartmentalization, that they can't really allow themselves to feel things. And oftentimes a lot of Libras will instead put that energy into their career, because they've got Cancer ruling the 10th house. And so their career is where they can put some of that emotional nurturance. That's why we often see them in positions of service, because that's where they have the moon ruling, or, where that's where they can feel some sort of emotional nurturing, because they didn't feel that as much in the home. Now, if you've got, if you got moon sitting in your 4th house, maybe this feels different for you. But if you've got other planets sitting in your 4th house too, like Mars, Pluto, a Saturn in Capricorn in the 4th house. So any Libra risings that were born while Saturn was in Capricorn will definitely feel this even more. And so the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Pluto has been in that part of your chart trying to bring transformation. And so oftentimes you may have felt like there's been things happening outside of you that have caused you, if you're not doing it, if you're not taking the impetus to do it on your own, there have been people that come into your home life, you know, like maybe marriage partners or partners that come into your home life, or things that threaten the stability of the home life from outside, that have caused transformation upon you in that part of your chart. Now, how far you've got in that is dependent on your level of awareness and willingness to self-reflect. And this full moon in Capricorn is going to show, is going to be a peak in something that started in your house, in your home life. Maybe you decided to move, or something was going on in your internal world around January 11th, 2024. And this is kind of a culmination of this. And the full moon in July in Capricorn, in the same part of your chart, could also be a culmination of, could be a second peak, you know? But this one in particular, like I said in the beginning of the video, I think gives us more of an opportunity to readjust, because Saturn, the ruler of this moon, is direct, whereas next month it's not going to be, and also some other things with the next month's moon, which I'll talk about then as well. But this gives you an opportunity to readjust, reorganize things within the home, or regarding your home life, your inner world, if necessary, because once Pluto comes back in September to November, it's like its last hurrah to really bring some completion to this part of your life. So on a mundane level, yes, you may be moving around this time. Maybe you moved in January and now you're having second thoughts. Maybe you thought about moving in January and now you're moving during this full moon or the next full moon. Definitely could be very much possible, but I think on a deeper level, this is representing your inner home as well. So even if you are moving homes, that's fine, but the focus is on how is it affecting me internally, my emotional foundations, my roots. The fourth house is also the relationship with the mother. So if that is something that has been difficult, as it often can be when we have Capricorn ruling the fourth house. Now, obviously there's a lot of other things that can mitigate that, right? Like if you've got a very beautifully placed moon, or like I said, moon in the fourth house, or something nice in the fourth house, Venus in the fourth house. But oftentimes, you know, with Saturn and Capricorn ruling over the fourth house, maybe there's been changes within the emotional, or within the relationship between you and the mother, or whoever was a nurturing caretaker for you, the main nurturing caretaker for you. Now this is giving you an opportunity to reflect on that, reorganize anything that you need to reorganize before Pluto comes in and really wants to complete this aspect of your life, so it can fully move into your fifth house, which will start a new journey for you, a new book in the series of books of your life that Pluto represents, at least. So, you know, in the beginning of this video, I asked some questions and that I said would be helpful for a lot of people to ask when we have a full moon in Capricorn and, you know, the sun is in Cancer. Some of the questions you can ask yourself are, how have I sacrificed emotional nurturing and feeling comfortable for outer achievements and goals, or vice versa? Since you guys have Capricorn naturally in your fourth house, though, it almost feels like there is a sense of responsibility for anyone in your home. And now on the surface, this can look really great, right? Like we love a sense of responsibility, a seriousness. And also on the other hand, like how is that working for you and how is it not working for you, right? Because when we bring Saturn into our home life, whether that's our physical home or like our inner home, well, those aren't like the most compatible energies, the moon and Saturn. And I talk about this in depth in the beginning of this video, but you know, making sure that we're not taking our responsibility too seriously in the fourth house, and allowing there to be a sense, allowing others to have responsibility for their own lives as well, could be really important. And also just not taking things in the fourth house so seriously, and learning that we can ease up a bit could have been part of your journey during this Pluto in the fourth house. I mean, Pluto in the fourth house, I have this natally, so I'm not a Libra anything, but What Pluto in the 4th house ultimately wants you to know is that you will never be satisfied by anybody else's emotional nurturance. It is on you. And when you recognize that you can be there for you, that you can be your own sense of stability within these upheavals, that is when you get the gold of Pluto in the 4th, which is, especially for Libras, this is important, to be in relationships that do not feel codependent, but that feel nurturing and in a much more balanced way, right? And we talk about Libras being balanced, but oftentimes what can happen in relationships is that Libras, and I, as a Gemini, I can say this about Geminis too. I actually said this about Geminis in their reading, is that we tend to kind of give our power away to the other. And so how can we learn to balance this? And one of the ways Pluto in the 4th house is asking you to show up in that way, or to show you how you can balance that, is by recognizing that nobody is responsible for your emotional world other than you. And yes, of course, we can go to other people for emotional nurturance, but when we recognize that there are some people who cannot meet us at the level that we need, Pluto in the 4th almost gives us like this need for emotional nurturance that's so strong that it overtakes everything. And we are usually, when we have Pluto in the 4th, we find that we are met with people, especially through childhood, because you guys have Capricorn there. But during this transit, you have been met with people who cannot fulfill your emotional needs. And so, like I said, Pluto is trying to tell you, like, nobody can fully fulfill that. It's you. Okay, so also what I want to say though, when we have a full moon opposition, is like, this is looking at your 10th house. The sun is in your 10th house. You're going to have a lineup of planets in your 10th house this month. And those are asking you to make sure that there's, like, you're not neglecting that part of your chart, your career, your public life, your public image, your reputation. Don't neglect that for what's going on in your home life, right? And like, what kind of a balance is being struck between those two right now? Okay, so let's do a tarot card reading for advice for Libra, Sun, and Rising during this full moon in Capricorn. Are you kidding me, you guys? The 10 of Cups, this is like peak emotional fulfillment. They're happy, the kids are playing, they've got their beautiful little house in the background. This is so beautiful. Like, wow, you guys, like, a certain milestone is like, has been achieved emotionally. Like, maybe you guys are, number one, this could be like you're getting married, or you're moving in with somebody, or you're moving house, you're getting a divorce, and you're moving away from like a toxic relationship or something. But the 10 of Cups is ultimate fulfillment in the emotional world. There is joy. There is a desire to, celebrate something. There's a desire to, there's just a feeling of fulfillment that you've completed something. This is the 10s are the final, that's a final number in the minor arcanas. And so allow yourself to, if there is celebration to be had in your life, this is beautiful. Like, maybe this is showing you that this Pluto in the 4th house has really brought you some sort of achievement in your inner world. But this could also be something regarding your 4th house too. It just gives me this Cancer vibe where it's like really focusing more on the emotional realm rather than the Capricorn achievement realm, which kind of ties in beautifully to the opposition between Saturn and Cancer, Yeah, so Libras, let me know how that resonates, and make sure you hit the like button if you like this video so I know to make more videos like this, okay? I'll see you guys next time. All right, so for my Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Rising, this full moon is happening in your 3rd house. Now, I've been recommending everybody to listen to the first part of this video in which I talk more in depth about having this full moon in Capricorn, how it relates to the next full moon in Capricorn that's happening in July, and how it relates to Pluto in Capricorn. Now, of course, I'll give a brief synopsis of this in every sign's reading, but yeah, to get a full picture, a more holistic view, I definitely recommend listening to the beginning part of this video, you guys. All right, so for Scorpios, like I said, this full moon's happening in your third house. Now, Pluto has been in your third house since 2009, and it's ending its reign. It's ending this story in November of 2024. Now, what this full moon is picking up on is that there is something in our third house that we know is just like the last remnants of it that need to change, that we need to let go of, that needs to be transformed in order to be in better alignment of all the awareness that we've gained in this part of our chart. So first, let's talk about what the third house rules. So the third house is our immediate environment. It's our siblings, it rules neighbors, it rules communication, rules our vehicle or short distance travel, driving from here to there, travel that's part of our daily routine. It is our mind, it is the way we think, our mindset, as well as how we communicate to other people. So this is the area of your chart that Pluto has been in. So you experienced massive upheaval and transformation in some of these areas for the last 15 years. Now, in January of this year, January 11th, 2024, there was a new story, a new intention within this larger storyline that was begun, a new situation. And so this full moon is a time for you to reflect upon how far you've come in the last 6 months, as well as recognizing if there is still a need for readjustment and reorganization of this intention, because you have another chance to reflect and fully let go of whatever is not working next month as well. So you're getting like 2 chances to do this before Pluto moves into Capricorn again in September of this year. This full moon is just a great opportunity for you to look back and reflect, and then decide if there's if there's a detour that needs to be made regarding your communication, regarding this situation that started in January, in which there was something that had to do with communication, thinking, your everyday environment. So like people who live with you, people you see on a daily basis, like your neighbors, and just your immediate environment, your thoughts, how your thinking patterns are. There has been needed to be some sort of major transformation in this. And so when this full moon happens, it's looking to the 9th house as well, because you've got Sun in Cancer in the 9th house. So some of the ways that this could be showing up for you is that, having Pluto in your 3rd house and changing all of these mindsets and the way that you communicate with other people and the way that you think and the way that you interact with people in your daily life is now saying, okay, and how can we integrate that into or how can we balance that with our 9th house stuff, right? So the 9th house stuff is our belief systems. It's instead of just our thoughts, it's our beliefs that we've come to because we've organized our thoughts in a specific manner, right? The 9th house has a sense of structure to it. And so what this could be, this lunation, this full moon could be asking you to look at and balance is make sure that you're not so focused on your immediate surroundings and your immediate thoughts and actions and words and the people directly around you, and to make sure that you're also integrating anything that you've learned in that area into, does this now match up with the beliefs that I have about the world? Is there some sort of integration that needs to happen in your between your current reality and your broader perspective on life, on your wisdom or philosophy on life? Is that having to transform to fit the changes that have happened in your 3rd house? And maybe it has, and maybe that's great, One of the things that, and if not, then it's just giving you an opportunity to achieve more of a balance in that area of your chart, or in those areas. Now, I talk about some questions that we can ask ourselves when we have a full moon in Capricorn. You know, you can ask yourself, how have I sacrificed, keep doing that. How have I sacrificed emotional nurturing and feeling safe and comfortable for outer achievements and reaching my goals? Or vice versa. So how have I, you know, sacrificed my outer achievements, my outer goals in order to feel emotionally safe, in order to feel comfortable? And how can we strike a balance in those things, right? So because the moon in Capricorn is in your 3rd house and the sun is in your 9th house, this makes me feel like there has been some sort of, you know, responsibility to your immediate surroundings, which is like amazing. But, you know, just making sure that we're not forgetting that we can have a broader vision than just what's happening around us, and those two can be better balanced, because there's just been, like I said, a lot of energy in that 3rd house because of having Pluto there for a long time. And we've gotten a little bit of a break because Pluto would go into Aquarius and then move back into Capricorn, but now, you know, it's coming to a completion in your 3rd house. And so whatever needs to be transformed that's left could be coming up during this full moon. All right, so for Scorpio sun, moon, and rising, let's see if we can get an advice card for this full moon in Scorpio. Feels like it wants to come out. Okay, so the 2 of Wands. Now, this is actually, I feel like I say this with every card, but it's true. It's interesting. Let me know what word that really personifies the word interesting that you guys would rather me use, because I've tried other words and I'm like, dude, it's not interesting. Just feels like so neutral, but also slightly positive. I don't know. Anyways, so this is interesting because I'm talking about the 9th house, and the 9th house rules broader visions. It rules travel as well, like long distance travel. So honestly, that's another thing. I just want to say, I just heard this for a lot of Scorpios. Maybe you guys have been way too immersed in your immediate environment and you are needing to travel, like long distance travel. So this generally means that going someplace where their cultures are different. You know, it's not a familiar environment. So like not going down to, you know, the place that you guys go every year, but it's like going somewhere new and experiencing new cultures that can expand our horizons internally. So for many of you guys, maybe some travel is coming up during this time, or you're thinking about wanting travel. And I think it would be very well supported if you guys did want to expand your horizons that way. Now, you can also expand your horizons in other ways, like through books and just exploring different belief systems. But I feel for a lot of Scorpios, you guys are wanting to get out of your little bubble. And you guys are wanting to experience life in a bigger, broader way, and travel is a great way to do that. The 2 is always about decisions. So you have a decision to make. There's a decision that has to be made in order for you to move forward. The 2 of Wands is also, beyond being decisions card, is that you are in the planning stages of something new. So the Ace of Wands is where we get an inspirational idea. This 2 of Wands is where we start planning on how we want to implement this new idea that we have, or you know, it's in the beginning preparatory stages of our lives. So like that's why I'm feeling like maybe a lot of you guys are not traveling, but you're planning somewhere to travel to that would broaden your horizons. I think the 9th house, like this is showing me that there is some balance that's needed. Like if you guys have been feeling depressed, or you know, the 3rd houses are mine. So if you've been feeling depressed, or that's the word that comes to mind, is depressed. This full moon would be a great time to like plan an adventure, or plan on expanding your horizons in a different way, reading a new book, taking a new class, something like that. Yeah. All right, Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising. Let me know how that resonates down below. Please like this video if you guys like this video, so I know to make more videos like this, all right? I'll see you guys next time. All right, so for my Sagittarius sun, moon, and rising, this full moon is happening in your second house. Now, I've been recommending this to everybody, and you guys are not exempt, that you listen to my first part of this video where I talk more in depth about this full moon in Capricorn. Especially for, I mean, I say this, I would recommend this for every video. I know it's tempting to go straight into your all signs reading. I do it as well, but I generally afterwards will go back and listen to it because I feel like there's a more holistic understanding given to you when you do both, right? So for this one, because we have another full moon in Capricorn happening in July, and then we have Pluto moving back into Capricorn for the last and final time of our lives in September to November of this year, and we're really finishing up the story that started in 2009, I think it's important for this video for everyone to make sure they understand, you know, where this full moon falls in that. Okay, with that being said, so this full moon's happening in your second house. Now, this is a part of your chart that Pluto has been traversing since 2009, with some breaks in the last couple of years, with it moving into Capricorn, with it moving into Aquarius, into your third house. But now it's going to be finishing up in your second house. So you guys have probably experienced a lot of upheaval in how you make money, in your income. You guys may have switched jobs a lot more than the average person here, gone from very different jobs to a completely different job or something like that. You might have had many variations in income, more than, you know, your friend who doesn't have Sagittarius in the top 3. And this, as I'm saying this, I'm like, this feels very Sagittarian, you know, like this like gypsy soul of like just like, you know, changing so much. But for you guys, it's been around money, your income, your self-worth, your value of yourself, your resources. So, you know, there's probably been a lot of changes in the amount of physical, tangible resources that you've had in the last 15 years, and your material possessions. Yeah, so this has been ongoing. Now, starting January 11th of 2024, there's been a smaller story in this long storyline regarding all those second house things that started with a new moon in Capricorn, or an intention that was set. And so this full moon, as well as the next full moon in Capricorn next month, will give you an opportunity to reevaluate and reflect on any, the peak of that intention or situation. So this is part of a larger story at play, right? From January until now, and then in July, we get another opportunity to do this. In the beginning of this video, I talk about how this particular full moon versus the next one in Capricorn is much more conducive to reflecting and then recognizing, do we need to make a detour? Am I still not really sure about this thing, and has it not really reached its culmination or its peak? Do I need to reorganize? Do I need to reevaluate? Do I need to maybe shift directions a little bit so that when the next full moon comes and when Pluto comes back into this house, I have a much cleaner completion in this area of my life? Now, when this full moon happens, it's going to be looking at your the sun in Cancer, which is going to be in your 8th house. So this could be asking for some sort of balance in between your 2nd and 8th house. So in what ways are we focusing so deeply on our values, our sense of worth, our job, our income, that we may be neglecting how we, join others in partnership in a deep way, in a way, because the 8th house is a merging house on a deep emotional level, but it can also be the house of joint finances, joint ventures, money that's not yours. So you may have felt that you're, and when I think of Sagittarius, I very much feel this like very hyper independence that can happen where you're like, focusing on my money. Okay, where am I going to work? How much money am I going to make? And not recognizing, it's so funny because when I talk about Geminis, I was saying the same thing, and we can both fall into these habits, Sagittarius and Gemini, of you know, hyper independence in certain ways. But Sagittarius really, like Sagittarius energy, I mean, you guys, I think people neglect to see that Sagittarius has a strength of character that is very deeply embedded, that Gemini on an evolutionary level has not reached yet, because it's only the third side of the zodiac. So it's not only is it not a fire sign, but it's very new in the evolutionary cycle. Whereas Sagittarius is where we get into the transpersonal realm, right? So Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, the last 4 signs are transpersonal signs. And so you guys have this like really, really solid sense of self, and that Gemini is just on an evolutionary level, like they're not here to really experience it in that way, if that makes sense. Whereas you guys are. So you guys can become just so fully immersed in your own independence. Even when you're merging with another person, it's like with Geminis, which I know people don't, you know, not really recognize this a lot, but it'd be important for you to understand this, as Jupiter being in Gemini in your 7th house for the next year, is that Geminis have a tendency to kind of give themselves up, give their power away. And Sagittarius has a tendency to not give their power away and not give up much of themselves in deep emotional bonding. So, you know, the give and take of being in relationships with other people is coming up for both Sagittarius and Geminis during this time. So asking yourselves questions like, am I focusing and putting so much responsibility on my work, my self-value, my income, and forgetting that there are people who can help me, that there are people that I can borrow money from? Like, these are things that, you know, might be coming up around this full moon, or maybe even next full moon, or probably both. And, you know, recognizing that, yes, it's important to have, you know, security and stability in my own sense of self-worth and my own value away from everybody else and my own money, but also recognizing that there's a time and a place where I can give a little bit, where I can receive a little bit from other people and not always be independent on my own. So let's see if there's anything else, because like I said, like Pluto's wanting to end, you know, this story in your 2nd house, and Pluto really wants us to stand on our own. So yes, like I'm not saying like just give yourself up. I don't think you would, even if I told you to, but also, like, how can we make sure that we're not going too far to the other side? Because when Pluto comes back in the 29th degree, and even the next full moon is at the 29th degree, that can feel like a very extreme degree, and it feels very like unstable. And so if we can bring some nuance to the situation now, it would just be more beneficial for us in the long run. All right, so let's try to get an advice card for Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising for this full moon in Capricorn. Okay, so I got the 2 of Pentacles, but I want to get a second card, because whenever I get the 2 of Pentacles, I like to, actually, I'm going to get 2 cards. Okay. Okay. So when I get the 2 of Pentacles, this to me is peak full moon energy. I don't know. There's a sense of busyness that it could be present in your life right now, and that could be good or bad. Like, honestly, I feel like this is a very dynamic time in your guys' lives, because you've had a lineup of planets in your 7th house. So you might have noticed that there's been a lot of change in your life, like a lot of fast change in your life recently. And if not, this might be coming for you during this full moon. Now, this to me tells me like that you're now all of a sudden maybe having a lot of things to do after like a period of not having a ton of things to do. And maybe you have been really busy for a while, but I feel like it's been the last couple of weeks. And you're trying to find a balance between how can I like tend to the things that I need to without feeling overwhelmed. Now, this could literally be juggling multiple jobs, multiple relationships, multiple physical things in our lives, because this is the Pentacles card. So I often think about, like, you know, running tons of multiple errands, or, you know, having 2 jobs, or having 2 goals that you're trying to accomplish at the same time, just running around, just feeling very busy generally during this time. Now, what I like to do though is that when I get this card, as well as the 2 of Swords, I like to get some cards that I can see maybe like what are we juggling towards, or in between. And so I've got the 10 of Cups and the 3 of Pentacles. So there's a sense of emotional fulfillment here. And this is kind of like, this to me feels like the 8th house, which is the water house, which is where the sun is going to be during this full moon. And then this is Pentacles, so this is also like earthy, which feels like where Capricorn is. And this card is about like working with other people, having a sense of agreement in the projects that we do. So you could very well actually be like juggling, you know, projects that you're working with other people on, and your own sense of emotional fulfillment within your relationships. This card is generally like family oriented, relationship oriented, finding emotional fulfillment in those things. And so when I see this, it's like almost like, I guess you could say, like a balance between emotional fulfillment within relationships versus your job, your financial and creative responsibilities. Yeah, I don't think I need to say anything more about that. Let me know how that resonates for you guys, Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising, down below. And please hit the like button if you like this video, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, so for Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Rising, excuse me, this full moon is happening in your first house. And so I've been recommending everybody listen to the first part of this video where I go more in depth, especially for you guys. I highly recommend that you guys listen to this full moon in Capricorn, because the beginning portion of this video, because I talk so much about you guys, about Capricorn energy, and how this full moon relates to the next full moon in Capricorn in July, as well as Pluto moving back into Capricorn for the final time of your lifetime in September of this year. Now, I'm sure you guys are going to be very glad to have Pluto out of your sign for good, but I also want you guys to recognize, like, to look back on who you were, your outlook on life, especially if you're Capricorn rising, like how you physically showed up in the world. Like, you probably look completely different. You probably show up completely different than you did 15 years ago. And Pluto has taken you through all these ups and downs and upheavals and chaos, all these things within your attitude, your appearance. Like I said, appearance specifically for rising, but it could also be for sun and moon too. It's just very much so for rising. Your body, the first house is the house of the body and the head. So there may have been a lot of changes made, or appearances that have changed within your face and your body. And maybe that's not been stable, you know, maybe that's been gone through a lot of different changes. Yeah, so the first house is your identity, the lens in which you see life through. That's gone through major upheavals, but nobody loves having Pluto in their first house. Like, and it's hard because whenever you have Pluto in the first house, like, it's also looking to the 7th house. So it's going to really bring these like power struggles within relationships. So even though, you know, Cancer's the one who had Pluto in their 7th house, you may find that you have been struggling with a lot of power dynamic struggles within relationships. And more than likely, it's been like power struggles on your end. But if you've attracted people who were trying to dominate you, it's you know, showing you that there was a lack of power within you, right? So with Cancers, I see that more is that, you know, not having a sense of power and attracting people who wanted to dominate, manipulate, them, whereas with you guys it almost could feel like you guys were the ones who were internally struggling with these power dynamics of like, who am I, like what, you know, what am I supposed to be in this world, and then creating power dynamics in the relationships. But that could definitely be reversed. Okay, so with this full moon though, it's giving you an opportunity before the next full moon and then the full moon or the Pluto coming back into Capricorn to reflect on any last few things about yourself that you're like, I know this aspect of me or this attitude or this outlook is not serving me, but my level of awareness is not matching up to what I'm actually doing in the world. And so we're trying to bridge that gap a little bit right now. I lost it. It'll come back. It'll come back. So, you know, this to me feels very much like, okay, yes, I remember. On January 11th of this year, you guys had a new moon in your first house in Capricorn. So on, you know, 2009, yes, that's a big story plot when Pluto moved into your sign. But on a lunation, from the lunation perspective, this new moon in January, there was some sort of intention, or there was some sort of situation, or, you know, this desire to change something. And now during this full moon and the next full moon next month, there is going to be a reflection about how, you know, how far have I come? This is almost like the culmination, the peak of that journey. And like I said in the beginning of this video, I feel like this full moon versus next month's full moon will be much more conducive to making a detour where there needs to be, readjusting things, reorganizing. So not starting something completely new, but in this aspect of your life, in yourself, in your appearance, how you show up in the world, your attitude, your identity. Maybe there's, you know, you're like, oh yeah, no, there's something that still needs just like a little adjustment. This full moon would be a beautiful time to reflect upon that and, you know, make the necessary adjustments as necessary. And not only will that help you with the next full moon in Capricorn, but it'll help you when Pluto re-enters Capricorn to have a fuller sense of completion, of wholeness, of, you know, this holistic sense. And for many Capricorns, I feel this has a lot to do with your relationship. So maybe during this full moon and next full moon, you'll get a revelation or illumination regarding your relationships. And, or if you're in a relationship now, or if you're wanting a relationship, or you have your previous relationships, something comes up that makes you have to, once again, like balance. In what ways am I neglecting the self for the other, or am I neglecting this other for myself? And that's kind of the balance that you guys are being asked to look at. Now, in the beginning of this video too, I had a couple questions that I think would be fitting for anyone, but especially for you guys. Some of the questions you can ask yourself are, how have I sacrificed emotional nurturing and feeling comfortable for achieving something outside, like in my public status, for achievements and my goals? Or vice versa, like how have I sacrificed my goals and achievements in order to stay comfortable and to feel safe internally? And, you know, when I think of Capricorn energy, I generally feel like you guys, you know, being a cardinal sign, are not ones to focus too much on, do I feel safe? Do I feel emotionally safe? You know, it's more about like Capricorn energy definitely tends to focus on being enterprising and starting new things, like doing new things and being involved in the world. And I feel like if that is you, this full moon is definitely going to ask you, like, you know, is there some sort of a balance that needs to be achieved in that? But honestly, I feel like Pluto and Capricorn has probably already touched upon that a little bit. So having to recognize that, like, even though it feels very heavy on you, like, it's not just about you, you know? And I feel like I can say that to Capricorn because I feel like you guys can take that level of truth. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else I want to say. I do want to just get a advice card for this full moon in your guys' sign. Let's see here. Okay, I've got the Ace of Cups. I want to get a clarifier for that though. What? I think that's actually really interesting, but okay. Let's clarify this Ace of Cups for Capricorns. Okay. Interesting. Did you guys get that? I feel like you did. I feel like you guys got this for the new moon in Gemini video they did. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you guys did. Anyway, so I got the Ace of Cups, which is, this is like beautiful. This is like, you could be receiving an emotional or romantic message during this full moon. The cups are emotions. The ace is the beginning. So if you're single, you could be meeting somebody who is a romantic and who is, you know, is bringing you a new beginning in the emotional realm. But regardless of if you're in a relationship or not, I mean, in a relationship, this could be a new emotional beginning within an existing relationship as well. And so there is a sense of a new beginning on an emotional level that is wanting to come through for you if you are wanting it as well, if you are choosing to do that. Because as you see, it's being offered to you, right? The ace is being offered to you, this new cup. And so it's, if you want to take this, I think it would be amazing for you and for your relationships. And when I clarified it, I got the 5 of Pentacles. And like I said, I'm pretty sure you guys got this for the new moon last month. So that's very interesting. But the 5 of Pentacles is about feeling like nobody's there for you, about feeling that nobody helps you. Okay, I just got something. That nobody helps you, that you're, you know, there's a feeling of poverty, regardless of if that's actually true or not. There's a feeling of like poverty and that nothing is enough, you know, and maybe you're feeling this on a financial level, like you're feeling like, oh, just like I'm not making enough money and there's a lack. This is a very much a card steeped in scarcity mindset. And so, you know, maybe this full moon is giving you an opportunity to see how this scarcity mindset is affecting not just you, but also your relationships with other people. Feeling like, you know, nobody takes care of me. I take care of everybody. Nobody helps me. Nobody does things for me. If you're feeling that way, you're being given an opportunity to maybe feel a different way about that. And if you do, I could see this really changing and transforming the way that you show up in relationships. And this could then transform when you show up in a different way, then the relationship has no choice but to transform with you. You know, obviously there's a second component of the other person, but that doesn't matter. You know, you showing up differently automatically because you're one of 2 people in there automatically changes the relationship. And so if we can learn how to bring a fresh sense of feeling around this scarcity mindset, not only would it help our own attitude, but like I said, our relationships as well. So I would love to hear how this resonates for you guys, how you see this showing up in your lives. And, you know, if you like this video, please hit the like button so I know that you like it, and I will see you guys next time. All right, so for Aquarius, sun, moon, and rising, this full moon is happening in your 12th house. Now, for everybody, I have been recommending that you listen to the first part of this video, especially for this video, because I talk in depth about, you know, Capricorn, this full moon in Capricorn, the next full moon in Capricorn in July, and then also Pluto moving back into Capricorn for the last and final time of our lives in September until November of this year. And so, yeah, definitely check that out if you haven't already. Now, let's get back to you guys. This full moon is happening in your 12th house. On a smaller scale, this could be something, so let's talk about the 12th house first. The 12th house is the house of healing. It's the house of closures, endings of major life cycles. It's a house of spirituality. It's a house of solitude and really the subconscious and the limiting beliefs that we hold that really run our lives. So this full moon is happening here. Now, the new moon in Capricorn happened in the same part of your chart in January on January 11th of 2024. So, you know, this could be a culmination of whatever was started during that time, and having to do with 12th house things that I just mentioned. And then we're having another full moon in Capricorn next month. And then Pluto will go back in this part of your chart to really complete something in this part of your chart that's been a story in your life since 2009 when Pluto first entered Capricorn. So a lot of like big things in play here, you know, and the 12th house being illuminated by the moon can oftentimes feel like some sort of revelation that happens in our dreams. The 12th house is also our dreams. So it can be this revelation that happens in our dreams, or when we're in solitude meditating, or when we're doing any sort of like subconscious work, or in the middle of our grief. And what this tells me, okay, I just got something for you guys. Okay, so during this full moon, okay, so when Pluto has been going into your, you know, going through your 12th house, and, you know, as you know, Pluto has been going into Aquarius, going back to Capricorn, going to Aquarius, and then starting November of this year, it's going to go into Aquarius, into your sign, for the next 20 years. So this is actually, like, I feel like really big for Aquariuses, because you guys are entering a whole new cycle with Pluto. Like, Pluto in the first house, like, not everybody gets that transit in their lifetime. I'm never going to have Pluto in my first house because it takes so long to go through these signs. So you are getting this opportunity to close out a major life cycle. If you believe in, like, you know, reincarnation and stuff, it's like you are really getting a chance to have a fresh start in this lifetime when Pluto fully moves into Aquarius. Now, it's not going to be like super easy, and, like, you know, there's going to be lots of twists and turns, of course, lots of transformations, of course, but you're getting an opportunity to really step out of the shadows. And what I noticed with this full moon is, like, obviously the sun is in the opposite sign, which is the 6th house, and full moons are oppositions that are often asking for balance. So here's my question to you, Aquarius. Have you been taking your spiritual life, your solitude, your limiting beliefs, your subconscious, have you been taking so much responsibility over that and taking that so seriously that you've forgotten, number one, that you have a body to take care of, and number two, that there is an outer world, right? Because the 11th house or the 12th house is a house of solitude, and the 6th house is, yes, it's a house of fitness, of your health, of your diet, which is why I asked you about, like, you know, taking care of your body. It's a house of pets. It's a house of being of service in a practical way, and also your work and your work environment. So the reason why I ask this is because if you're focused so deeply, which I love doing subconscious work, and our subconscious runs our life, so we have to do subconscious work, but we also have to be willing to take that work that we do and apply it to our real concrete life, you know? So it's like the 12th house is a house of service, yes. And honestly, you know, meditating and becoming spiritual is an act of service to humanity, because we are, what we recognize in the 12th house is that we are a part of this collective unconscious and collective conscious. So if we do our healing work, then yes, we can heal a part of that collective unconscious. So, you know, that's service that we're doing. You may also actually give services in hidden places like prisons, hospitals, mental asylums, whatever. You know, those things can have happened too during this time when Pluto's been in this 12th house. But what I think this full moon is asking for you to balance is to, you know, make sure that all of those amazing realizations and healing that you've done actually get a way to come out into the real world as a way of practically giving service to others, practically integrating your awareness and all this work that you've done in your subconscious into your daily life, into your health routine, into your daily habits, into your fitness, into how you interact with your pets, into your work environment, you know, like not getting so lost in the 12th house in hiding, and actually like coming out into the world and saying, like, this is what I have to offer, this is what I'm doing. And I think that this full moon and the next full moon are going to make sure that there's a balance of that, so that when Pluto moves back into Capricorn, there can be a completion of that. Yes. Okay. So, and like I said, this could be also something to do with something that started in the beginning of this year that is being culminated, and you know, you are being given a chance to reflect and redirect or reevaluate or readjust if necessary. Okay, so I would definitely take this full moon as an opportunity to do that, because the next full moon in Capricorn feels like it's very much more about reflection. Okay. So advice for my Aquarius sun, moon, and rising for this full moon in Capricorn. The moon. So interesting. This is like a Neptunian card. So this is like the 12th house. Okay, I want to get another card, actually. And this is a major arcana. So just remember how I was saying, like, how I feel like this is a major turning point for Aquarius. Like, this just confirms that for me. I want to get another card. You know, it's funny. I always get one card, but I love pulling cards. Like, I just feel so invigorated when I pull, like, a second or third card. But just for the sake of time, sometimes I don't. And complication in these, like, short videos. Okay, let's clarify. The moon, please. Okay, interesting. Okay, so the moon is a Neptunian card. Now, at its best, if you listen to my beginning of this video, there is a sense of intuition, spirituality, creativity when it comes to the moon. This is a very feeling oriented card, right? And so it makes sense. This is a full moon, and not only is it a full moon, sorry, I was just trying to feel something out. Not only is this a full moon, but it is in a placement where the sun is in a moon ruled sign. So there's definitely like a lot of moon energy around this, and you getting this makes me feel like, once again, this is placing a lot of emphasis on this 12th house. So you know how I said that there could be like a, you know, the 12th and the 6th house, maybe there's a imbalance that needs to be balanced out during this full moon. And I neglected to mention that, like, that could go both ways. So maybe like you're like so glad that Pluto left your 12th house, and so you just started going out in the world and you started doing stuff, and you neglected the 12th house. So you neglected rest, healing, solitude, your spirituality. This card is a card of intuition. However, it can also feel like it's a situation that feels there can be delusion, right? So if there's any decisions that you're making at this time, and you know, in the beginning of this video, I talked about how Neptune is squaring all the Gemini planets around this full moon, and I didn't really talk about that in the all signs because I just, you know, I felt that would complicate things too much. But for you guys, maybe this is causing a lot of confusion for you. And when I clarified it, so my point is that, like, listen to that aspect of the video as well. But really the thing is like, this full moon is a time for rest, contemplation, getting in touch with your intuition, and not really doing a whole lot. Like I said, small adjustments are okay, but for you guys especially, I feel like there is a deep need to take care of your inner world right now. And I got it clarified by the 3 of Swords. So, you know, this card never looks cute to people. They're like, ah. And yes, it can very much be heartbreak, but it doesn't have to be just in relationships. Maybe there's healing endings and closures that are happening to do with a sense of heartbreak or a sense of betrayal. It doesn't have to be in relationships. A sense of feeling like there is mental anguish, like your thoughts are not really serving you at this time. So go internally, meditate, allow yourself to heal in the ways that you need to, and to close things up, because like I said, you're really starting a new cycle in this life. And so you really need to tend to make sure that, like, anything that needs to be healed is healed. And I say you need to make sure, like, there's no threat here, you know, like, it's just for, you know, because I just want you guys to be happy and healthy moving forward. So yeah, let me know how that resonates for you guys, and I'll see you next time, Aquarius. Oh, and also make sure to like this video if you like content like this, so I know to make more just like it. All right, so for my Pisces sun, moon, and rising, this full moon is happening in your 11th house. Now, I've been recommending that everybody listen to the first part of this video where I go in depth about this full moon, because I do feel like there is a lot of depth to go into here. And I will obviously give a synopsis for the all signs, but yeah, I definitely recommend you listen to that or you watch that so you can get a more holistic understanding of what this full moon is doing regarding the Capricorn part of your chart, because we also have another full moon in July that is in Capricorn, right? So we get like 2 full moons in Capricorn. And then we have Pluto moving back into Capricorn in September of this year till November for the last and final time of our lifetime. So very interesting. And I believe this particular Capricorn full moon is much more conducive to redirecting, rerouting, readjusting anything that needs to be done in this Capricorn part of your chart, rather than the next full moon, which very much feels like there is not a lot that we will want to change during that time, and we'll mostly be reflecting, reevaluating, but then letting go and not really trying to reroute anything, if that makes sense. This full moon is definitely a full moon, but it can give us an energy of like a new moon in a way, because we have another full moon next month. Now, Pluto has been in this part of your chart since 2009. On a smaller scale, we had a new moon in Capricorn on January 11th, 2024. And this full moon, as well as next month's full moon, could be some sort of peak or culmination of something that started in January regarding the organizations you belong to, your groups that you belong to, friends groups that you have. So not just like a friend, but groups of friends. Any humanitarianism work that you do, technology, the internet, anything like that, and also any hopes and wishes and dreams that you have for the future. The 11th house is a sense of belonging in the world. So, it's not just about Cancer is a feeling of belonging, but the 11th house is, where do I fit in the world, in society? And so that's why it calls into question our friend groups, the clubs we're a part of, the groups we associate with, the organizations we belong to, because those give us a sense of belonging in a bigger frame. And so this has been a part of your chart that has been evolving and transforming with major upheavals from 2009. And so January 1st or January 11th of 2024, there might have been, a storyline that started, an intention that was planted. And now you can, during this full moon, reflect back on the changes that have happened in this 11th house. And, if there's any changes that need to be made, kind of giving ourselves the opportunity to do that before the next full moon and before Pluto finishes up what it wants in here. Now, anytime Pluto is involved, it's talking about power. So, these themes of power have probably come up in the society, in the organizations that you belong in your friends groups and things like that. Power struggles have probably happened. And when we have a full moon, the reason why it's a time for reflection is because there's an opposition between the sun and the moon. And so oppositions are, giving us a chance to reflect on where we are falling in the balance of things and if we need to move towards more balance. So for you guys, the sun is in Cancer in your 5th house during this full moon. And so it's giving you an opportunity to see that, within this 11th house stuff that's been going on for the last 15 years and maybe since the last 6 months, there's been a lot of changes, like I said. This full moon is looking and saying, okay, that's you got to deal with that. But also, what about your sense of self in of itself? Regardless of what organizations you belong to or where you fit into society, what about your own sense of creativity, your own sense of self, your own sense of passion and romance? This is very romantic house, whereas the 11th house is platonic, right? Like it's about, serving others and society, but the 5th house is about love, it's about romance, children, having a childlike spirit. expressing ourselves. And so make sure that, you know, you'll just get a chance to reflect on, are you ignoring these fifth house things in order to figure out whatever's going on in the 11th house? And, or vice versa, you know, like maybe you're not giving enough attention to what's happening in the 11th house, but for some reason I feel like it's more so that you guys are getting an opportunity to bring more fun and love and romance and play and entertainment and creativity into your life, rather than being so focused on like the future. What am I going to do? What organizations do I want to belong to? You know, what power struggles am I having within these organizations? And it's more coming to like, who am I? What do I want to create in the world? One of the things that I asked to, or that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, were some questions that I think that some of us should ask ourselves during this full moon, maybe. And these questions are like, how have I sacrificed emotional nurturance and feeling comfortable and safe for outer achievements and goals? Or vice versa. So how have I sacrificed my goals and outer achievements in order to stay feeling safe and comfortable internally and emotionally? And so that's something to reflect on during this time for you guys, as well as, you know, everything that I just mentioned about the 11th and 5th house. I also want to say Neptune is in 29 degrees of your sign. So I feel like Pisces in general during this time are feeling like, you know, when the 29th is an anaretic degree, I think I talked about it in my new moon in Gemini video. I went more in depth about the 29th degree, but it's a very fated, unstable karmic degree. It makes us feel like we need to finish something because it's about to move into the next sign. And while Neptune is a collective planet, so everyone's feeling this in different parts of their chart, for you guys, it's happening in your first house. So Neptune in the first house, I mean, Neptune feels at home in Pisces, and Pisces in general, especially if you're a Pisces rising, have this like nebulous self of self and identity. But Neptune finishing up in this part of your chart and then going into your second house is really giving a lot of Pisces a feeling of like they need to finish something about themselves, their outlook on life. Like if there's anything that that needs to change, you're feeling very, very burdened with that right now. And Neptune is actually, I talked about this in the beginning of the video too, is squaring Gemini planets, Sun, Mercury, and Venus around this full moon as well. And so you guys are feeling like there's a lot of options, and yet you don't know what options to choose. And when Neptune squares Gemini planets, there is this, I read this quote in the beginning of this video. If you go to the timestamp of like Neptune square Gemini planets or whatever, I read a quote from Deepak Chopra that I think Pisces would really like to hear. So listen to that, if anything, because I feel like there's a lot of choices that you feel like you have to make. And Neptune in your sign squaring this is asking you to have a little bit of faith in the universe and not get so bogged down in like making the right decision or not. Okay, let's get a tarot advice card for my Pisces sun, moon, and rising for this full moon in Capricorn. The Emperor. You know, the Emperor to me feels like very Martian and Aries-like. So I could see this. Number one, this is a major arcana, right? So whenever we get major arcanas, we recognize that, you know, the themes that we're working with are much deeper than just the situation itself. You know, there's an underlying theme that we're trying to address here. And so when I think of the Emperor in its negative form, this is like what I was like, authority problems, like a dictator, power struggles, because he's, you know, ruling with like, I am the person who is, you know, doing this. So you could be personifying this person, or it could be outside of you. And so what I feel like this is pointing to is like, the fifth house is a Leo house, right? And meanwhile, this is Aries energy. It could feel similar in a way that like you are either being asked to step into a role of leadership or having some sort of power, and that can feel uncomfortable for some Pisces because of Neptune being in your sign, and because you naturally rule the 12th house, which is a hidden house, and it's a house of solitude and rest and, you know, the subconscious. So some Pisces, especially sun, moon, and rising, can really feel, especially sun and rising, can really feel this. It's difficult to impose a sense of authority. And I think maybe what some Pisces are being shown right now is that, but if you don't impose any sense of authority, then it will be imposed outside of you and be seen as a power struggle. So I'm just looking at this balance between the 5th and the 11th, and I'm thinking about how, you know, the 5th house is like self-expression. And like I said, the 11th house is like a sense of belonging and feeling like you're a part of a group. And how we're trying to balance that during this moon, or seeing, you know, where it is on that balance scale. And this for me is telling me that, you know, if you are sensing authority outside of you, or a struggle outside of you, or somebody trying to dictate outside of you, this is a remembrance to come back to the 5th house, is that you're not just a person who's a part of a group, you're your own unique self. And so re-establishing a sense of, so like I said, many Pisces may be being asked to being put in a leadership position right now, but even if you're not, there's a sense of re-establishing a sense of inner authority within yourself that negates outside authority, so that when you are dealt with these situations, you have this inner sense of authority, of being in control of the situation, that nothing outside of you can really touch that. And that's power, right? Like inner power, that's true power. Okay? All right, so let me know how this resonates for you guys. Make sure to like this video if you like this video, and I'll see you guys next time.